All right, here we go. Episode 28 of the Former Action Guys podcast. This week I have my friend Chris Walker on the show. In addition to being an artillery officer and a JTAC, he's a working actor with appearances in Punisher, The Blacklist, and most recently Ray Donovan. We discuss his 2 deployments that he went on with 1-7, one MEU, and then one time on their 2012 deployment to Sangin. We also talk about when him and I worked together at First ANGLICO. We picked up another 5-star review this week on Apple Podcasts, so shout out to Bon9188. He said, Semper, and he said, loving the podcast, keep it up, 210, Victor 26 Bravo Fist. So, hey, man, thanks for shooting in the review, 210, that's where I was at, it was my first artillery unit, so I remember old N Street, good times over there. Anyway, make sure to get your review in. We're going to read it on the next episode, or send in any comments you have to formeractionguyspodcast@gmail.com. That's formeractionguyspodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and make sure to share the show with your friends. I appreciate the continued support, everyone. It's been great. And then finally, make sure to check out my website, jkramergraphics.com, and my Instagram page, jkramergraphics. All right. Thanks everyone that sent in the questions to Instagram. Also, I put that up on my stories, so we got through some of those. Chris answered some along the way without us even having to ask, and then some we answered there at the end. So thanks again for that. And yeah, all right, let's enjoy the show, everybody. All right, so hey, today I have Chris Walker on the show. Him and I worked together at First ANGLICO, but he's an artillery officer. You did more than one deployment to Afghanistan, right? Or was it just the one?
No, it was just the one, and then I did a couple MEUs and, the one we were on.
Yep. Okay. So then, yeah. So let's start from the beginning, though. What made you decide to get in the Marine Corps or join the Marine Corps?
Well, my family, we had a lot of people in the Army. My grandfather was in World War II, and he was a sergeant. The story goes that he was with the OSS, but I don't know how truthful it is because I know a few CIA officers, and we looked it up, and he doesn't show up. So what I think he did is he was a state trooper in Michigan, and he infiltrated Nazi groups in America. So he had a pretty great story about like being in an elevator with a bunch of Nazi sympathizers in the 40s and having to like sit there and like in a very black area of Detroit start just railing against black people to get in with these Nazis, and like so he doesn't get like knifed in this elevator. And then my uncle, his son, was in the MACV SOG in Vietnam, so he was a sniper. He's got all kinds of crazy stories about killing NVA officers. And then so we have a lot of military tradition in the family, but no Marines. And then when 9/11 happened, I tried to join as soon as I turned 17. But my parents wouldn't sign the waiver, and I actually tried to go to the Army because Band of Brothers had just come out. And, I was like, I want to go be airborne.
That had to have been like an amazing recruiting tool for the Army.
Yeah, because the first episode came out a month before 9/11, so everybody was already into it. And then it went on for that, and it was just like it was huge. So my parents wouldn't sign the waiver, and then I had the Marine recruiter at high school. In my high school, he came over to the house, and I was like, I want to join the Marines, and I was like asking for $1, getting turned down, and asking for $50,000 instead. My parents were like, fuck no.
Yeah.
So then I went to college, kind of forgot about it for about 2 years, and then I ran into my buddy who is in 0811 in Fallujah, who did provisional infantry stuff, and we got to talking, and then I ended up going to a talk at school, and it was Nate Fick, and he was on his book signing tour for One Bullet Away.
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, so I went and I talked to him, and he was like, I got the first taste of Marine attitude in that, and like I was like, hey, I think I'm going to join, and he goes, yeah, well, we'll see if you make it. And it was that kind of very Marine thing where it was like, it's the first time in my life people were like, well, I'm sure you'll do great. It was like, yeah, we'll fucking prove us wrong kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you have to earn your keep here every day, which I've always liked about the Marine Corps.
I didn't realize you had that lineage. I didn't. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, and I mean, my other grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. I've got like some great photos that he took from the bridge of his ship. He was there during D-Day with like the landing forces, just running around like a small cutter in like the escort fleet. And then they gave that cutter to the Russians under the Lend-Lease Act, so that he's got this great photo that I have hanging in the living room now. They took off the coast of Alaska, sailing that up there to give it to the Russians in the later part of the war. So yeah, I mean, decent lineage in terms of that.
I think it's easier for guys like I'm the same way. My dad was in the Army. My one grandfather was in the Army, and the other one was in the Air Force. And then I have like an uncle that was in the Navy and stuff. And like my dad was in the Gulf War. I remember him deploying when I was a kid. And I have a picture of him. I actually have a picture sitting over there that's him getting an award, and it looks like it's nighttime, but it's just so black because of the oil fires from the Gulf War. But as a kid, I didn't watch like Westerns and shit like that. As a kid, I was watching war movies, and me and my brother were playing war. We had Dad's old Camis we'd be running around in and shit like that. Same. So it was like, same thing. I thought I was going to join the Army. I remember Band of Brothers, but also I was like super pumped when like Saving Private Ryan came out.
I went and saw it like 3 times.
Yeah, I was just like, this is going to be great. They kept showing like the replays of it on AMC, and I grew up watching all the classic war movies. My dad, we watched all the classic war movies. My mom's side, we're watching like Sound of Music and shit like that. But so I think it was kind of a natural fit. So I can understand why you kind of lean towards.
Yeah, I was that kid who never stopped playing G.I. Joe. Like in high school, I started playing paintball, which sounds really lame once you're in the military. It's like when people tell you they play airsoft or paintball, you're like, oh, okay, whatever.
I've never done airsoft, but paintball's pretty fun.
Yeah, paintball's pretty fun as long as you're not taking it too seriously. Like, it can be really fun. But when people start acting like they know how to fight because they play paintball, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I actually had a guy on a movie set tell me that one time. He was like, we were doing some stunt stuff, and he was just like, oh, no, it's okay. I play airsoft. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, okay.
Like, it's basically the same thing, so.
Yeah, he's like, I'm tip of the spear, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, shut up.
Yeah. So when did you end up going to OCS? What year was it?
It was 07, and I did PLC, so I did the 10 weeks.
You want to explain what the PLC's?
Yeah, so the Platoon Leaders course is different than the Officer Career Course, OCC. So OC1 is you go between your junior and your senior year, and then they put you in to DEERS as like an E5 just to pay you while you're there, and then you go back to school in your IRR, in Individual Ready Reserve, until you graduate. And then when you graduate college, the next day your OSO will come down and commission you and pin you on as a second lieutenant. For OCC, those guys, they go after their senior year. So they've already graduated. So as soon as they're done with OCS, they go to the Marine Corps Museum and they get commissioned right there. So I still had to go back and do a year of college, which was very funny because like I was not like... I'm a completely different human being than I was before I joined. I was in choir in high school. Like I knew I wanted to do. Oh yeah, I didn't play any sports. I was kind of a big wuss and very afraid of like a lot of things and like a picky eater and just like just kind of a wimpy kid. And then I didn't run a mile until I decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps. And then the year leading up, luckily I had a friend who was a personal trainer. And he got me in shape, and so by the time I got to OCS, I was, I was scoring like a 285 on my PFT. But yeah, I was like a total wuss, and I went back for my senior year of college, and it was like a completely different game. College seemed completely. It wasn't scary anymore. Like the consequences of it seemed so less after having dealt with the drill instructors and. Having had all the shock and awe of essentially boot camp at OCS, the no stalls on the toilets and all that kind of stuff. Like I used to be like nervous in the bathroom, and then I went back for my senior year, and I would like be like shitting in the library and laughing as loud as I could to try to make everybody else uncomfortable.
You definitely get used to no personal privacy in boot camp. That's 100% true.
Yeah, so I went and I did that. I went back, finished. Then I commissioned on the deck of the USS Yorktown in Charleston. That museum they have there. And a buddy of mine, the one I talked to from high school, he came down. He had just gotten out. so I made him. He was in the IRR, so like he agreed to shave his beard off and get a haircut, and he put his blues on and came and gave me my first salute. And,
Oh, that was cool.
yeah, that was really cool of him to do it. A guy named Whit Moody, he was a sergeant when he got out. And then you go to Quantico. Well, before I went to Quantico, I ended up having to wait for my to class up at TBS, the basic school in Quantico. So I ended up working PTAD for my recruiter. He had been a Citadel grad, and the Citadel was just down the street. So I worked. They call it a special projects officer, which is just the sort of like code for we don't know what billet to give you.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna like give you this title. So I just sat in I helped out with the JROTC unit, or the ROTC unit at the Citadel, and I wrote the letters of instructions for like their hikes and the small training exercises they would do. We'd take them down to the obstacle course all the time. It was just a good way to like stay in shape and get used to some military culture. You have those staff NCOs who are all there to be MECEPs, they're trying to get commissioned and become lieutenants. And so, I'm this boot lieutenant who literally hasn't even been through TBS yet. So I like the most dangerous of all officers, because I have some inkling of rank, but no clue how to use any of it. And so luckily I had these guys who were like one step behind me, and you could argue way ahead of me because they were all staff NCOs, and they would like take me aside and be like, "Hey, don't do that. You're an idiot. This is."
And these are dudes that were doing MECEP at the Citadel.
At the Citadel, yeah.
Oh man, why would somebody put themselves through that? Like,
I don't know. Why not go back to like, the College of Charleston just up the road? It's 6-1 girls to guys, and I was just like, I knew I wanted to join the Marine Corps, but I didn't want to go to the Citadel because I was like, why subject yourself to it on your free time?
Yeah, no, exactly. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, all the way up until high school. So in the South, everybody's heard of the Citadel, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
And then I was down in South Carolina for an MRAP course while I was a mechanic. And I was like, well, I'm going to drive over there and check it out because I've always heard about it. And it was like way smaller than I thought. I was like,
it's very small, and it's a really weird culture down there. It's very big in like growing up in South Carolina. I always knew Citadel grads, but it was more of like this nebulous concept because everybody who works in business or local government or the big lawyers, they're all Citadel grads. So, and it's once they get like only 30% of Citadel grads commission in the military. The rest just do it to get the ring, and it makes it like a good old boys club. And you shake hands, in a way that shows off your ring in job interviews for preferential treatment. That's like a big thing in South Carolina. So,
it's kind of like going to USC down here in Southern California.
Yeah.
It's like the little mafia of those dudes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really interesting concept that people put themselves through that, because when I was there visiting, I saw a dude getting yelled at by, I don't even know, one of the knobs getting, yelled at while he was trying to leave to go home or something.
Well, the thing they like to yell at them is the seniors will yell at them. It's like, how many days until I get my ring? And then they have to know how many days it is until the ring ceremony. And then they have to just like dumb stuff, and then they'll just like haze the crap out of them. But yeah, anyway, I finished there. I was there for like 8 weeks or whatever it was while I was waiting for TBS to start, and then I headed up to Quantico, checked into Alpha Company, old Arctic Alpha. So we ended up being a winter company in Quantico, and you go through your 6 months of everything, and they start you off at squad level, and there's a lot of orders writing, and you have to learn how to do fit reps and administrative and history, and it's like a college semester, but you're getting yelled at by what you assume are very experienced captains until you become a captain at that level, and then you realize it's like, oh man, that guy was just a lieutenant like a couple months ago, and he's acting like he's AJ squared away. But when you're there and you don't know anything, if you don't have the benefit of being a prior enlisted guy, I was just like, one of the themes of my sort of career has always been being terrified that I'm going to fuck something up.
Yeah.
And so I tend to like ask a million questions and pay a lot of attention. And I think some of the reasons I study as hard as I do when I go to like courses is because I'm just like, I'm like always convinced I'm going to fucking fail. So I just like, I did okay while I was there. I was in the top third.
Well, it's always a good idea to like be, tell yourself to just shut up and listen, instead of
and I'd heard a lot. I'd had the benefit of talking to a lot of guys, and they were just like, just shut up and color. There's going to be a lot of like fuck games and stuff, and it's going to be very tedious. But if you just play the game, you'll get a lot out of it.
Was TBS more coursework or field work?
So it's both. Everything is done in like a package. So you start your squad package, and then they'll give you a bunch of coursework, and you'll spend a week in the classroom. You're showing up in like this classroom at like 07, and you're just getting death by PowerPoint from all these instructors until 1800.
Yeah.
And then you'll do like a sand table exercise, or you'll do something to like put it into a more like solid concept, and then you'll do like those tactical decision games and discussion groups and stuff. And then the next week you'll do something out on like a range that's sort of like it's like a walk portion. So you'll do like a rock walk version of it. Hey, we're going to go out and like get in patrol formations and talk about, LZ ops or whatever it is that's going to go into the field portion. And then the next weekend, they'll chopper you in to, whatever TA-16 part of Quantico, whatever the training area they decide on is, and then pick you back up on Friday. So they'll leave you in the field for a week. And so everything you do, you do classroom, prac app, field, and it's just like that for 6 months. So you go from squad to platoon reinforced to heavy weapons, a little bit of engineering exposure, artillery, call for fire, a little tiny like exposure to close air support, and then
I've had a guy tell me that he could control air because he did it at TBS. I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
No fucking way. Like I did one 9-line at TBS, and that was because my staff platoon commander had been a Huey pilot, who had done nothing but CAS in Iraq, and so he was just like, and by me saying I did a 9-line, he just stood over my shoulder and told me what to say the way we used to do with like our boots. I was just like, all right, when you're teaching
read this piece of paper.
Exactly. So, but I mean, a lot of people hated it, but I thought that if you really paid attention and read between the lines of various instructors being braggarts or whatever, you could glean a lot out of it.
What do you think the coolest thing you did at TBS was?
The coolest thing at TBS, I think, was so like I liked all the obstacle course and the E-course stuff. Like I listened to DeMaro's episode, and I know that he was like he's a huge Spartan race guy, and that's sort of where it all came from, is the E-course there. Like that's just a lot of fun. I mean, you're running around the woods with an M16 and you're 21 years old, and it's just like, it's like, fuck yeah, this is cool. But like, I think the coolest thing we did were the squad or the platoon on platoon attacks, where we had like, you got dropped off in like a mout town, and then they gave us sesams, and we had shit tons of smoke grenades and pop up flares, and we set booby traps. And I got made the platoon commander on the defense. So you would have an offense and defense days in a mout town, and we had this giant building that we had to defend against first platoon. And so, when you're defense, you're supposed to just like die in place eventually.
Yeah.
So I decided, I had already gotten the whole time you're there, you're competing for an MOS. You put down your choices, and you get your military occupational specialty towards the end, based on your class standing on leadership and fitness and academics and so on, and then field evaluations from instructors. So I'd already gotten artillery. I wanted infantry, and then in ground intel, because you could also get the infantry MOS and go to recon if you had that. So just like everybody else, I wanted to be old Captain America and run around shooting bad guys in the face. I got artillery, which is it turned out great. I was really like upset at the time, but it turned out great because I loved everything I've gotten to do, especially once I got to ANGLICO and stuff. But so at that point, I didn't care, and I wasn't like trying so hard to be by the book when they gave me this defense. So I was just like, okay, we're going to have fun with this. And first, I'm just going to make first platoon's life as difficult as possible. So I wrote this order, and we stood around the terrain model, and I basically told them, I was like, hey, we're going to treat this house like Home Alone. We're going to set booby traps everywhere. We're not going to like mass our fires. We're just going to like act like an insurgency in the house, and I want to like draw them in and then just like start picking them off one by one. And so the guys got really, really creative and just came up with all these like ridiculous shit. There were dudes like hiding in the rafters, and popping out of like toilets, and it just got ridiculous. But the platoon commander thought it was fucking hilarious. He was just like, it was like this engineer guy, and he was just standing there laughing as we were just like harassing first platoon for 2 hours. That was probably the funnest thing I did there.
So what was it like when you
shit out of each other with these paint rounds?
Yeah, those fucking hurt too.
Yeah,
especially if you get the larger ones that are there's like 2 different kinds.
We got the little ones, so they're not terrible. But if you get like open skin, or like it gets under your mask, like you're gonna have a huge ass welt.
Yeah. I had one hit me in the fingernail one time, man. That fucking did not feel good. So you then you go to Fort Sill, you do all that training, and that's like how much? 6 months, right?
That's 6 months of straight up classroom time. You're learning ballistic math, and you want to kill yourself. And I think everybody there was an alcoholic the whole time we were there, because Fort Sill, Oklahoma is just a terrible place.
While you were there, was there a unit that you were trying to get to that you were like, okay, this one, I want to go East Coast or West Coast, or did you?
So I already knew where I was going.
Oh, okay.
I knew I was going to 311 out in 29 Palms. I found out at the very last day of our very last field exercise. They gave us our orders, and I knew I was going there. I didn't know what that meant, and then they had this. It's kind of like a career day where you go to the staff, and all the staff officers are there who have been stationed in all these different places, and you get to talk to them to like get a sense of what the place is like, family ways and schools and housing and so on. And I'm there with my ex, and the funny theme that every single person we talked to who had been stationed in 21 Palms is they always started their spiel with saying the words in this order. They're like, "It's not that bad," and then you're just like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be horrible." And then you get there, and like after a while, you realize, okay, the training's very good, and you're 2 hours from Vegas and LA and San Diego, and yes, it is miserable there, but as long as you have a car, it's really not that bad. And so you end up being one of those people who ends up saying that same thing. So I got to. Yeah, I mean, RD school was kind of a joke. Everything's open book, open note, and it doesn't very well prepare you to be an artillery officer in the Marine Corps. So then we got to 29 Palms in December of 2009 at this point, because you're in training for so long with TBS and Fort Sill. And I got immediately assigned to 1st Battalion, 7th Marines to be an FO. And I got really lucky with that because I got to get sent down to Coronado for 2 months during the workup to go to the EWTG PAC, Expeditionary Warfare Training Group Pacific, their boat school. So I got to go become a maritime navigator and coxswain for the Zodiacs. And so I spent a month doing raid stuff in the Bay of San Diego, which was so much fun.
What does that entail? Because I've never had anybody on that's done anything like that. So what do you?
So you go down there and you take nav classes, and you have to learn like the rules of the road and basically get a boating license, and then you have to learn celestial navigation and lat long as opposed to MGRS, and you have to account for tides and drift, and so you have to learn all these like NOAA, National Oceanographic charts, and then where to buy, like where to get the charts, how to order them. How to read them, how to use a sextant and a compass and slide rules and all that stuff. And so you do that, and then for the coxswain course, you have to learn like basic boat maintenance for the 55 horsepower engine. You have to build the boat, which comes rolled up in this big rubber, like it looks like a big rubber duffel bag, and then you like roll it out, and then you stick these metal deck plates in, which then makes it rigid, and then there's compartments that you have to learn, the order to fill them in, and if one of them breaches, how to plug it, and then then you have to take that navigation and learn how to apply that on the little compass that's on the gunnel tube, and you spend hours and hours and hours out at night, especially in the Bay of San Diego. Doing nautical navigation runs from this buoy to that buoy to this light or the Mexican border, or all the way up to basically almost Pacific Beach sometimes. And it's good fun. It's pretty cold out there in the water in February because the water's only about 50 degrees. So after a while, your body temperature starts to lower enough, even in San Diego, that you're pretty cold. But
That's a common misconception for people that have never been to Southern California. They think it's like warm water, but it's pretty chilly.
I didn't know that until the first time I came out, and I just like left off the side of the boat I was on, and like all my friends were laughing. They were just like, "Ha like."
It's pretty cold. So how long was that course again? 2 months?
Well, it's a month, and then you have to do, so that's a month down there getting qualified, and then you do a month of, you go from EWTG PAC to SOTG, which is now EOTG, Special Operations Training Group, which is now Expeditionary Operations Training Group. You do the raid packages with them to get qualified to leave on the MEU. And so we headed up to, you start your raids down there in Coronado, and then you move up to Firebase Gloria right by First Anglico CP, and you do off of you launch at the Del Mar boat base, and then you land at Red Beach, pretty much right near where our office used to be. And you have to do these. You'll get picked up by a Navy. I don't even remember what they're called. It's not an LCAC. It's like a
the LCU.
LCU, yeah. The LCU will pick you up and then drop you over the horizon, like probably about 22 nautical miles out after sundown. And then you've got to navigate and hit with about like 100-meter error left and right on the beach. And then you splash your scout swimmers, and they go in and then neutralize anybody on the beach. And then you have to hit your target and make the timeline. And then getting back out through the surf is always the hard part, because it was like the bad time of the year where like surf was like really up. And so like these boats are old and rickety, and they've been beaten up so many times from so many classes going through. And so like the engines kept failing, and like trying to get through a surf passage with just paddles is it's like damn near impossible.
I think everybody's seen the videos of the Bud students getting flipped over.
Yeah, that's a whole like week that they do with you down in that course. They call it Engine Appreciation Week. So they don't let you use an engine for like the first week, just to make you really happy when you finally do it. So they make you do the surf passage just with the paddles, and you cannot get out through Red Beach almost in Coronado without an engine. So like the whole point is just get you beaten up in the surf zone. And then you have to carry the boats on your head, which weigh a couple hundred pounds. I think it's like 300 pounds with the deck plates in. And so you got 6 guys, and if you're not all relatively the same height, it's pretty awful for whoever's either the tallest or the shortest person. And you have to carry it, and they call it the Trail of Tears, and you have to carry it about like 3 miles on your heads. So it's
fun stuff.
It's a lot of the amphib phase of the recon school BRC. We don't do the longest day, but it's most of what they do down there. It's in the same boathouse, same instructors, same everything.
Yeah, I remember seeing them so people that go through that haven't, because I had a guy hit me up on Instagram the other day saying that he's thinking about becoming an 0861 now because he's been talking to me on Instagram and listening to the podcast. Yeah. And that's where you go to school. It's Coronado, and you actually see the dudes going through like BRC and shit right there, running around that PT field and everything.
They'll have the ropes on them, so they call them ropers when they're a boot like that, And the other fun thing is like if you're staying in the hotel there, like I was there during TCP school, and it was like Sunday night, and all of a sudden, just like right outside my window, it just sounds like Baghdad, and it was Buds kicking off Hell Week. Oh, yeah. The instructors are just like throwing flashbangs at these kids and just like chasing a dude right behind him with a saw full of blanks, just like scaring the shit out of him. And it was pretty funny, and you just hear this like just panic ensuing down below you.
That's fun stuff.
Yeah, it's such a great place.
The Scout Swimmers, is that a different course?
Yeah, so there's 3 courses in the boathouse. So there's the Navigator, the Coxswain, actually 4, the Scout Swimmers, and then the Mechs. The Mechs, they kind of have it rough because like they have to do so much work, and the only work that they're going to do is at like 02 when we get back. They have to like fix all the boats up, and then they don't get to go out. So they basically just get, you're like throwing your keys at the valet, and they're left to clean up your mess at the end of the night. But
standard mechanic life. That's how I felt as a mechanic, dude. I'm like, we're fixing everybody else's fuck ups, and we don't even get to drive these damn things.
Exactly. The Scout Swimmers, they had it tough. They get really they get hazed pretty hard during that course. So they do these run, swim, run, fin runs pretty much every day before they start all their classes, and they have to do like surf observation and beach survey, and then they have to. Those are the guys that have to get extra. They get like extra hand-to-hand training, and basically they teach them how to like how to bury yourself in sand and wait till like a sentry walks past you on the beach and then just like burst out like one of those spiders that buries himself in the ground and then just like slit the guy's throat and then disappear again. So they do some pretty cool shit. And so we learned a little bit of that. But yeah, once we were done with that, and then once we got qualified with SOTG, I chopped over officially to 1-7, and I was with them. We went on the 31st MEU, and the 31st MEU is, everybody tells you it's not a real deployment, and I didn't understand that until I had done my Afghan deployment. But it's, you go to Okinawa and you're sitting there for about a month and a half, and then you load boats, and you barely get to know anybody on your ship, and you go do some token exercises in Thailand and the Philippines, and then you go back home, and then you spend another month in Okinawa just drinking your face off, and nobody wants to work because you're leaving the gear that you have there in place for the next guys. So you're not like doing maintenance so much if you're in the battalion landing team, and so you just kind of rot in Japan for a little bit, and if they're not allowing you off the base, which happens from time to time based on local politics, it can be pretty miserable. We were lucky. We were there during a time when the Okinawans were fine with us, so we got to see a lot of the island and explore. It turned into kind of like a month's vacation on the backside.
I hear there's like always protesters at the gate no matter what, and then like it's like always like a small little group of protesters.
Like 4 guys.
And I've also heard that they're paid by the Chinese just to like sow dissent, within the fucking
that may be
local community.
There's people that definitely don't like us. They call us the gaijin, the outsiders, and some restaurants will kind of like shoo you out the door if you try to go in there.
What's the best food you had while you're in Oki?
Shark. I had shark teriyaki. It was fucking delicious.
Really?
Yeah. There's this really famous sushi place that my old boss, Major Morales, he was a 5th ANGLICO guy. He knew the island very, very well. And we had this big, they bring out this thing. It just looks like this big dragon boat, and it's sushi, of every kind that you can think of, and all. You try like a million different rolls, and the shark teriyaki was really good. It was really salty, which I like salty food, so it was pretty good.
Huh.
Very tender. Just kind of melted in your mouth. And then they also had a Mongolian barbecue place where we did like. You could get like emu, ostrich, kangaroo, water buffalo, crocodile, like anything, and they just all throw it in a big wok, and then you try all this different meat. That was pretty cool. The best part of that MEU was going to like Singapore for a week, and
Singapore's great.
Yeah, God, that place is so much fun. It's expensive.
People that have never been, it is super expensive, and it's super. I love it when we're walking around and people are like, "This place is so clean." Like, I wish the U.S. could be this clean. I'm like, dude, they beat people here. That's why it's this clean. It's like if you throw trash down, they're gonna cane you.
Well, and it's easy to find you too because the entire country is 35 square miles.
Yeah.
So think about that. It's like less than the size of.
Is it really? That's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's like maybe it's like 35 miles across. Maybe not square miles, but. It's very, very small, so they have to like, so I get sent down there again after that deployment for a month with 1-7 as a subject matter expert for fires. And we were there in the jungle for like a week, as well as, just kind of hanging out downtown. But their training area is like, teeny tiny because the real estate is such a premium there. And so they outsource a lot of their stuff to like Darwin. And then they have fighter debts in like Idaho and like permanently debted in other countries because they don't have that kind of training space. But Okinawa was great. And then the Philippines was a total shit show because we ended up in. Everybody else went to Crow Valley for that big exercise that always goes out there, all the BLT. But the raid company, we went to Ternate and we landed, and our company commander, none of the other lieutenants liked him, and I was such a boot, like I'm the first person to ever acknowledge that like my first deployment, I didn't know what I was doing. Because as an artillery officer, you always get shit out to the infantry as an FO before you've ever been in a platoon. So like you don't know what to reasonably expect of the fleet. And so you're just kind of hanging around and trying to look cool, but like, you don't really know that anything other than how to call for fire and then just follow the grunt in front of you. So we land in Ternate, and the boat raid company commander for the Filipinos, he wants to hang out with our company commander, who's this captain, and he invites him to his hooch one night, and they start drinking and swapping war stories, and all the lieutenants were all sitting down on the beach with like our, just like sitting there with like our M4s across our knees, just like kind of chatting and looking out at the water. And then we see this private, there's like a PFC dragging our company commander down the beach in nothing but UDT shorts. And we're like, what the fuck? So we like run over, and he is like missing his weapon. And he's like almost completely naked except for these, swim shorts. And we're like, what's going on? And he is just drunk as can be, and he doesn't know where he is. We ask him where his rifle is, and he's like, it's cool, I got it, it's all good. And then so two of our lieutenants, they just like run off into the jungle. Turns out he had gotten drunk, and in his drunken stupor just like handed his rifle to a Filipino and taken a bottle of brandy. And so in the Filipino's mind, like, that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
So we try to take the rifle back, and the guy's like, no, it's mine. And so they have to basically like fight this guy, and like, so now all the Filipinos are pissed at us because we've just robbed one of their guys in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And so now they're pissed at us. Like, there's all this shouting going on. The company commander's not making any sense, and then he starts accusing us of mutiny. He's like, don't you question me, boot? He's like, fuck you. He's like, this is a mutiny. He's like, lay your weapons at my feet. And I'm like, no, you're drunk. That's not a lawful command. And he's like, he takes a swing at our JTAC, and then he pokes our company gunny in the eye. And the company gunny, this gunny who's just not to be fucked with, this guy named Gunny Love, he just decks the company commander. And we're expecting the battalion commander to show up in camp any minute. Like, he was scheduled to be there that night. Luckily, only the S3 showed up, this other captain. And we're like, sir, you got to do something. Like, this is out of control. This guy's like threatening to have us all shot for mutiny. And, we don't know where his NVGs are. And, this is a fucking mess. And he's just like, all right, go up to where the Marines are. He's like, just bed down for the night. And then it's like, that next morning, there was a super typhoon started coming into the Philippines, so they extract us out of there onto the Essex, and we go back up to Subic Bay to link up with the rest of the boats in the ARG, because we had to go to a humanitarian operation after that, and so we had to request mass to the battalion commander and explain everything. So we had to all write these statements and stuff, and we show up, and one by one we go into the battalion CO's office and like lay out, this is exactly what happened. He hit him, this guy hit that, he's drunk, he's da 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 da. And by the time I walked back to the Harper's Ferry, the company commander's stateroom had been emptied out and he was gone.
Oh shit.
And I was like, yeah. So we ended up getting a new company commander halfway through the deployment, and then we lost the first sergeant because his testicles randomly spun in his sac. Testicular torsion is what it's called. So he just woke up. Yeah, he just like woke up one morning and his balls were like broken. And he was just like, ah.
That happened to a guy, to one of my guys in Iraq.
Yeah, I don't know how it happens. God willing, inshallah. I hope it never happens to me. But yeah, so the entire command deck of the company changed halfway through that deployment, and it was just a total shit show.
Did that captain did the company commander end up getting kicked out for that, or just moved along to somewhere else?
So the thing is, what I heard, and then there's again, I was a second lieutenant at the time, so you hear the rumor mill, you don't know how sure it is, but I do know that he got pulled out. Instead of being formally relieved, they moved him to the MU S3. So they pulled him out of the BLT and put him at MU headquarters in the S3. And what I heard is that the MU commander, who was a full bird colonel, was up for his first star to be a brigadier general. Yeah. And he didn't want it on his record that he'd had to formally relieve a company commander on his MU. So he soft relieved him and just moved him.
Oh man, that's so fucked
that guy
up.
That guy ended up becoming an INI for some reserve unit in Texas. It's just like,
if that would have been an enlisted guy, he would have been in the brig.
Oh, he would have been shot on the beach.
Yeah,
kidding me?
That's crazy.
They strung him up from the yard arm.
Yeah, the MU is the proving ground for general officers for a lot of them. For the infantry general officers, it seems like.
Well, it seems like the commandant or the sergeant major of the Marine Corps too.
Yeah, Sergeant Major Black. Out there doing his thing. Not a fan. I've made it known on my page. I'm not a fan. Did you?
Yeah, well, I did that. I did the New York City Veterans Day parade here this last this last year, and I laid the wreath at the presidential ceremony. It was me and Master Guns Escalante, and yeah, Sergeant Major Black walks by and he like gives me this sideways look. Like you could tell he recognized me, but he can't place me, and I'm just like, don't look at him, don't look at him. I just want to walk away.
A lot of guys sing his praises online and stuff that worked with him back when he was an infantry guy, and maybe he was great and stuff, but my experience with him as an enlisted dude and him being the sergeant major was just not good. Like,
well, yeah, and like what he said to us on the San Diego when we were on the trap mission for Yemen. Yeah, we can talk about that later if we want to keep going chronologically. But
no, you can go ahead. We can.
Well, yeah. So we were stuck there on the USS San Diego. It was I was with the recon company, and we were the trap force. For the Yemen embassy in Sanaa, which was being threatened by the Houthis in 2014, and he comes on, and so like your ship, was it the Macon Island?
Macon Island, making babies.
The Macon Island and the Comstock. They're like, hey, we're leaving CENTCOM. We're going back to Singapore first, and then we're going to go to Hawaii. He's like, you guys are going to stay here on station and do this mission for another 2 weeks until the 26th MEU shows up and relieves you. And we're just like staring daggers at him. It was like, man, fuck this. Like, we couldn't go anywhere, and there were all these like, we were supposed to be doing VBSS stuff, like, counter piracy, but they wouldn't let us go do that, even though it was happening in the AO. They were giving it to like SEALs and stuff, and so we're just sitting there, just rotting off of Yemen. And he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're going to stay for 3 more weeks while we go home and drink." And it's like, "Fuck you!" And he's like, "I don't understand why you look so upset." And I was just like, "Don't you?" Man, like, come on. He's like, well, I don't care if you don't like it. You just have to do it. And I was like, that was just a very bad leadership presentation to me. I was just like, man, you could have phrased this differently.
100%, man. The whole thing, I was not a fan, because I mean, just everything. Like when they went to Iwo Jima and they stopped the guys from going to the summit because a few people fell out, you know, like shit like that. And then the harassment, like, he was the biggest dick about people's re-enlistment packages and stuff like that.
Oh, boy.
And I had to send shit back to Tracy Offutt, to have him fucking do stuff, because he wouldn't sign off on anything. Like, he wasn't going to sign off on Flores's re-enlistment and stuff like that. Maybe
that had to do with the fact that he was angling for Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and he wanted his metrics to look good.
Dude, I remember him going around the ship telling people they needed to put duct tape on their fucking Nalgene bottles unless they were black. Like, if they were any color than black, they weren't tactical. It's like, dude, we're on a fucking ship. Like, get the fuck out of here.
It's like Space Force with their new woodland camis.
Yeah, I mean, this dude, I don't know, man. He just, it was like he went out of his way to make life more difficult for everybody. It's not like we were becoming, technically or tactically more proficient. He was just being a dick. And I don't know, but whatever. He served Major of the Marine Corps. Good on him. He made it to the top. It's a political game at that point.
Colonel Trollinger is a general now too. So
he is. They got an award. I think they got an award for Command Team of the Year after that deployment. And
my favorite was when were you there, or was it just I think it was just the captains when they did the command climate survey.
No, I wasn't there, but you told me about it. You can go ahead if you'd like.
Yeah, so they were like, the command climate survey is supposed to give the commander a good sense of how people are satisfied with his leadership or the general atmosphere in the command, and it's supposed to be anonymous. But what we learned is we were unhappy as the captains who were doing a lot of work, and then the majors were taking a lot of the credit, and then we were that was only leading to more work at the detriment of the mission. Often they would start tacking on and levying more.
Briefing was more important than than actions.
Yeah, exactly. And I brought that up during this meeting. So we go down there, and he's like, he calls down all the captains, and he's like, I want to know why the hell you're so goddamn upset with me. And we're like, well, how do you know it was us? And apparently he can filter the results of the survey by rank, and there's only 10 captains. So he can pull us all in, and he knows that it's us, which completely annihilates the point of it being anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, well, what the fuck is your problem? And so God bless him, Pat Zuber, who was the recon company commander. He acted like the social tank that we all got behind. He braved the first comment and then opened the door for us to air the airing of the grievances. And he was like, XYZ, this is my problem. And then I was like, sir, I'd like to see a little bit more focus on content rather than format. We're getting told we have to redo PowerPoints because the bullets aren't right when we have a time-sensitive target. We only have 4 hours to strike this target. I'm spending 3.5 of them doing formatting on PowerPoint rather than doing rehearsals with my guys. And he's like, well, who told you need to be doing that? And I was like, you did, sir. And he goes, no, I didn't. Shut the fuck up. And I was like, okay, roger that. That tells me I will never be honest with you ever again.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan. It was and so before this, you had gone to Afghanistan and stuff like that. So going from a deployment like that to a deployment like the MEU, it's a tough pill to swallow.
It was. So jumping back, we finished that 31st MEU, and then I went down, did a couple subject matter exchanges back down in Southeast Asia. In the meantime, I went and acted as the fire direction officer of Mike Battery 311.
You want to explain the role of the
so
FDO?
you're the guy in the battery who's doing all the computational procedures. So you receive a fire mission from the forward observer up on the hill, and you're the guy that has to process it and basically dial the guns in, send all that data down to the gun line to get rounds on target. So there are 5 requirements for accurate predictive fire in artillery, and the FDO is responsible for 4 of them. The only other one is of the FO, his accurate target location that he sends you. So it's a lot of math and it's a lot of nerdery, and you're sitting in a tent behind the howitzers, and it's a necessary evil. But the good part about that time was that my complaint that I didn't have any experience in the battery on my first deployment, which made me kind of a shitty lieutenant. That sort of started to get fixed because I now had 6 staff NCOs, all these staff sergeants. I had the comm chief and the FDC chief and the motor T chief and various other dudes who were there mentoring me. You mentor your young guys, but the staff NCOs will mentor a young lieutenant if they're good. And so I started realizing and becoming a better officer and realizing that I needed to up my game, and it wasn't about looking cool. It was about doing what was good for the Marines. And, I was probably still making some dumb shit decisions. I can think of a couple off the top of my head that, you look back at yourself when you're a young officer and you realize that you were probably every cliche that anybody's ever said about lieutenants. It's like, are these my men kind of bullshit? And you're just like, oh, fuck. Like, I did that. But, it's a learning process, and you have to learn to forgive yourself eventually. But
everybody's awkward when they show up to their unit. No one knows what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I think by the end I had it a little bit better. But what I really got when I really started to come into my own was when I got back to 1-7. So I went back to the infantry because I knew they were going to Afghanistan, and as soon as I got back from my first deployment, I heard that this was happening. I marched straight into the XO's office. I was like, sir, I've already been out with 1-7. They know me. I want to be the guy to go take this team for their Afghan deployment. He was like, okay. So he put me right on the slate, and
that's pretty lucky to get 2 back-to-back FO positions.
Yeah, well, I was going to be the fire support coordinator at the battalion. So
okay.
I mean, I was like king FO, but
even so.
But yeah, especially with the same unit, that kind of continuity is great. And what was great is that the sergeants that I had on the first deployment, who were my FOs, I got to send to THP school, and they became my JTACs on the second deployment, and they stayed with the same companies they had been with.
Nice.
So there was continuity there too. So everybody, guys who were with Suicide Charlie stayed with Suicide Charlie. Guys who were with Dog Company stayed with Dog Company.
So how different was your workup for the MEU compared to?
Well, okay, so that's the big thing is the 31st MEU, and another reason it's not really a real deployment is you don't do a like what I would call a genuine workup. You do a few exercises, 10 days here, 10 days that. But it's not like a huge package that's like a master plan the way it is when you're going to Afghanistan. That workup for Afghanistan, we basically the way our colonel did it. He was like, we would do 10 days in the field, 4 days, get a 96, you go home, then you do a normal work week, then you do 10 days in the field and a 96 and a normal work week, and we did that for 7 months. So you're in the field a fuck ton, but you got really, really good at your job. And you got very comfortable being uncomfortable. So we did a lot of shooting, and then we did by the time we got to our Mojave Viper, which is now ITX, our final qualifying exercise. I think we did pretty well. I was blessed with a team that had a lot of self-starters, really motivated young Marines. But the best thing, I had the staff sergeant he was a lap mover to 0861.
We're the best. That's what I've heard.
He was he was an 1171 water purification specialist originally.
Pauly Shore.
Yeah, exactly. And his name was Chris Lewis, and he was good, man. He was just like, not only was he good, but he was personable, and the Marines loved him, and he and I got along really, really well, and so we had a great dialogue, and we worked very well together, and the battalion just absolutely fucking loved him, and they loved our guys, and they remembered me. I'm not going to say that they loved me, but I think we got along, and so we ended up having a very great deployment. We landed in Sangin in March of 2012. And that was tough because my mom died like the weekend before I left. So I knew she was sick with cancer, but my family had kind of kept it from me, how bad she was, because they knew I was getting ready to go, and they were kind of like protecting me. And then she died the very last day of EMV, and I basically finished CERTX at EMV and jumped straight on a plane and made it there. And she died about 4 hours later, and then I buried her. And then a week later, I was headed, or probably just under 2 weeks later, I was in Afghanistan. And then 4 days later, I had dropped a bomb and killed a bunch of people. So like, I never had like a combat experience where I was, I didn't have any of my guys get killed. Personally, we lost some guys in the battalion, and I still remember all their names and everything, but they weren't that close to me, being a battalion. And then, but the hard part for me in the deployment was, I just dealt with my mom's death, and I basically hadn't dealt with it. And then by the end of the deployment, after dropping all these bombs on all these people, I started feeling like this massive guilt thing about it. And I just like didn't want to do it by the end. I was just like, finding myself watching dudes dig IEDs and just being like, oh, please just walk away. Like, don't make me kill you today. And then I'd do it. And I was just like, you just get really, really numb to the whole thing. But that was the trauma or whatever.
Sangin's a rough spot, man. There's always something going on there too.
Sangin is always fucking busy with fighting. It's the heartland. So I was in Fob Jackson.
Okay.
We landed and we ripped out with 3-7, and I knew shit had gotten real as soon as we went through Kyrgyzstan, the normal route from March Air Force Base, and it was we landed in Kyrgyzstan and did the thing in Manas for like 3 days, and then hit Leatherneck and did RSO and I. You BZO your weapon, you get all your in-country briefs. The JTACs, we all, we have to do our in-country
take that test and all that shit.
Yeah, all that stuff for the ROEs and the spins for the local AO. And then we got on these 53s and we landed in Fob Jackson, and which is now they changed the name to like Sabit Kadam. They wanted all
Sabit
Afghan.
Kadam.
Yep. Yeah, after a while. And I know you know that dance, man, because
I was there the following summer.
Yeah. So as soon as I landed, I walk off the tail ramp of the 53, and I've still got my sea bag on my shoulder, and all of a sudden there's like the whole ground just shakes, and there's this huge explosion, and there's a massive IED right outside the gate in the bazaar.
Yeah.
And one of the Afghan ANA Danger Rangers, those Ford Rangers they all drive around in, had struck this IED and just vaporized everybody inside. It was a big one. And I was like, wow, shit got real fast.
Yeah, and the bazaar's right there. It's not like it's very far away.
Yeah, you could go to the back wall and chuck a rock and hit the center of the bazaar, which is what I think our gate guards used to do. Sit there and return fire with rocks at the kids who would sit there and throw rocks at them. Going
through the bazaar is one of the wildest experiences of my life. Like just the sounds, the smells, like the traffic, it's just all like you just have to like merge into the
you always
chaos.
Walk past the district governor's office, which is right there, and there's like this line of people waiting to get like passport photos because they instituted those new IDs, and so that everybody's just sitting there in that Afghan squat all day, staring at you and smoking.
Yeah,
you're just like eyeballing them, like stay the fuck away from me. and then the kids are running up and trying to steal shit out of your dump pouch, and you're like, chocolate niche, motherfucker, like, get away from me.
Yeah, they'll take whatever you'll give them. They'll throw rocks at the vehicles.
Yeah. Well, so one of our staff sergeants got really tired of that one day, and he just got out. And so the Afghans believe in communal punishment, like as a village, like anybody can discipline a child.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's true.
So when this one kid was being a little shit, he chucked a rock at one of our guys in the turret, and this one staff sergeant from I think it was like Alpha Company, like he just had enough, and he just like stomps on the brakes, hops out of the MATV, and just walks up, and with his like Oakley gloves with the enamel knuckles, just like dusts this kid.
Oh, jeez.
Just bam, and we're all like, oh fuck, and we think we're gonna be in trouble, and the dad is standing not 20 feet away, just laughing his ass off, like that's what you get, you little bastard.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
play stupid games. That's funny.
Yeah, they would like they would try to steal like your Gatorades and everything, and like half the time it turned out to be like your piss bottle. And it would be like, oh.
I think we had guys that had slingshots and stuff that they would carry up there because you can't do anything. You're not gonna obviously can't shoot them. You're not gonna shoot a pin flare at them.
But I was doing as well as fires. I was the IO guy, which they in typical Marine Corps fashion, they didn't tell me I was going to do information operations until the day I landed. And they're like, oh, by the way, not only are you going to blow crap up, but now you have to apologize for it on this radio station we're going to give you. I was like, oh, neat.
Yeah.
So I've got like all this like swag that I'm supposed to hand out to the Afghans. We've got like T-shirts and flags and cards and lighters and candy and whatever. And so like they attached the FET with me. So So anytime I went on a patrol, I had these two female Marines with me. And it was really funny because like the Afghan guys would like try to impress them, but like they had these crappy like Motorola cell phones, and they would like play what they thought was like cool music out loud and like lean up against a pillar and like make eyes at the female Marines.
What's up?
What's up? And we would throw candy at the kids. So the kids were always like kind of in my vicinity, and they would the females would really like sort of entertain the kids while I was trying to get away from them. But yeah, that bazaar is a wild place, and
fucking dangerous place too.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a really dangerous place. We had a motorcycle blow up there. They had a car bomb motorcycle that they parked in front of a shop that was supposedly helping the Americans.
I had some sketchy moments where like we knew that the Taliban were driving around dressed as women so that they could sort of recce the gate, and I was walking through the bazaar one day, and I saw on a patrol, and I saw a guy that was very obviously a guy with like the shawl over his face, dressed as a woman on the back of one of those motorcycles. I was like, ooh,
what's up, dude?
That's a bad guy right there. Like, and I can't do anything about it. Like,
oh yeah, sometimes you can tell. You're like, that dude is a bad dude. You get that look. You're like, that dude would kill me right now if he could.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
We were there, and we ripped with 3-7, and like within 4 days, Colonel Folsom, the 3-7 commander, hadn't even ripped yet. Just my counterpart had. Dave Campbell was the guy I ripped with. He was, he was like OCS, TBS, and Fort Sill with me, same battalion at 311, and then I was ripping with him. So I got a very, very short turnover with him. So I'm sitting there with Colonel Folsom one day, and like we see these guys, and they're dealing weapons to each other out in the east. Like halfway to what is it? Not Kalia guys. Zamindawar. Zardrigay. That was it. That rat trail out to the east on the way out to Kandahar, and so they were out there, and we were watching them on the P-TIDS balloon, and this guy pulls out a Dragunov and an RPG from under a blanket. And Colonel Folsom was like, all right, you just bought yourself a bomb. And so this is my first fire mission live in country. And I call HIMARS, and 2 rockets out of Fob Eddy, and this is before they moved them to Eredvi. So Fob Eddy, it was like a beautiful distance for the HIMARS, because they apexed at just the right time, so that like it had like a 90-degree perfect angle of fall straight down on these guys. So 90-second hang time on these rockets from when I get shot to when they're coming in, and from out behind this hill that I can't see behind comes this like shepherd and his flock of sheep. And they're coming right up to where I'd put the aim point for these bombs to hit. And I was like, oh, fuck, like I'm about to murder this poor shepherd. Like my life is over. And the bombs hit, just like detonates the whole tree line. And you see the shepherd sitting there, or like standing there out in the middle of the dash. And there's the shrapnel's kicking up little tufts of dust all around him. And it looks like Moses parted the Red Sea. Just like it just misses him perfectly on either side. And his entire flock of sheep behind him, poof, dead.
Oh,
and so
fuck.
He's just standing there all alone now, and he just looks around, and then he just takes off running in some random direction. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just like, my asshole is puckered into my, esophagus at this point, and so yeah, we got 11 Taliban with that and 17 sheep. So he shows up to the gate the next day, and like we pay him like a couple $1,000s for all these sheep, and then after that, every farmer and their brother was like capping their own sheep and then coming to the gate thinking they're going to get a couple $1,000s. So I ended up getting all these like nicknames. It was like they called it the Mutton Massacre after that, and then I got like Hannibal, Silence of the Lambs, Bo Peep, a couple of those nicknames, and then when I left the battalion, they gave me this 45, a Kimber 1911. And on the side of it, it says, Captain Walker, USMC, Me 20, Sheep 0.
Nice. The sheep, we had a pretty funny story. We were tracking this HVT, high value target, and you know how it goes. You sit there and watch these dudes forever, trying to verify it's the dude.
Sitting there just watching him, everything he does.
Yeah, and if you lose sight, the whole process starts over for a second. So we're watching this guy forever, and then we're finally like, all right, we're getting ready to strike this dude. Like, it's go time. And then, same deal. We call in. It might have been Highmark. I don't remember what it was that we dropped on him, but and same deal. A flock of sheep, and this dude come walking up as the ordnance is like on its way, and we're like, oh fuck. And the PGSS operator, which is like the big blimp on the base with the camera on it, that can see pretty far, and we'll use that for spotting.
It's like the Eye of Sauron. If you ever watch the Lord of the Rings movies, like it can see anything and everything.
Exactly, and you have these civilian contractors that run it, and they have a radio that they talk to you with, because they're normally separate or whatever. Anyway, so this dude is like, oh, he's like real country. He's like, these sheep. He's like, there's sheep walking up to the target, and we're like, there's nothing we can do now. It's already on its way. And then boom, and it doesn't kill the sheep. Like the sheep and the herd are just like stop. Like, oh fuck, this dude like right in front of us just got blown up. And then the dude, the PGSS operator is like, looks like good hits. Oh no, it looks like the sheep are eating the bodies. Like, oh, and he starts like, oh no, why? And we're just like, oh my god.
You see some truly horrendous shit with that PGSS balloon. Like I remember one morning, like walking in the COC, and you're like, there's everybody crowded around I popped in at like late at night, like after my shift was over. I usually slept at night. My staff sergeant had the night shift, but like I popped in for some reason. Everybody's crowded around the TV, kind of like, oh my god. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're watching this kid like 5 kilometers away, and he's just going to town on his dog from behind. And then he reaches around and starts giving the dog a little handy, and we're like, oh my god. And you just see like the most, because you can see everything with that thermal camera. It's so bad. When
I was down in Marja on my first Afghan pump, we had a joint COC towards the end. We brought in, because this was like, they were trying to integrate the Afghans more, and like, hey man, this is your fight, so you're going to work in the COC with us, which kind of worked. They didn't really work with us. We built like a little wall because we still had SIPR machines, like the secret computers and stuff like that. Yeah. So anyway, we were same thing. It was like nighttime. We're sitting there watching, doing what you do. You sit there and just watch the cameras. And these two dudes, oh my God. One dude was holding this donkey's head while another dude was smashing it from behind, right? And I'm like, we're like, no. And he stops, right? The dude finishes, stops, goes around, and then they trade. The other dude goes to hit it. But before he does, he stops. The donkey lifts its tail, takes a massive shit, and then the dude goes in and starts pounding. And we're like talking to the Afghan guys. We're like, what the fuck? And they're like, not us. They're like, those are Marja dudes. We're just like, what the fuck,
it was always funny how the guys from different districts would like call each other like, the people in this district are like hillbillies or whatever.
Well, I mean, Helmand Province is just so country. It's like going to Iowa. You're not saying that people in Iowa fuck animals or anything, but it's like farmland, It's
like a caricature of deliverance country. It's anything and everything happens in this place. But like getting away from doing horrible things to animals.
There was a lot of good people out there. I hate for that to be the impression that people have of Afghans.
Yeah, you know, the Afghans that the district governor that I had, he was like, God bless him, like he had taken a serious stand, you know, and he's in the middle of Taliban heartland, you know, and for him to basically, and I don't think he did. He slept inside the walls of the FOB, but his office was right outside, and for him to even do that was a huge risk, because we started a district community council, you know, and somebody joined, and some Ishaqzai guy, you know, one of the tribes, insulted a Nurzai guy, and then you know, next day the Ishaqzai guy's head was on our doorstep with his balls in his mouth, you know. Like,
oh, fuck.
Yeah, it was straight up gangland shit, some cartel stuff. But, you know, that's the kind of consequences you're dealing with. And for this district governor and a lot of these guys, you know, a lot of the ANA guys were actually really great. You know, there was a sergeant who was this total rock star, and he got killed about halfway through our deployment. And, like, the mourning that happened, even among our Marines, was it was kind of touching. You're like, wow, you know, this guy was actually, he gave a shit. And that was the heartbreaker for me, working with the district governance as well, because I had to do a lot of key leader engagements and stuff. You know, working the information operations side of it. You know, I was blowing crap up in the afternoon, and then I'd have to have meetings with the governor like every evening, and talk messaging and community outreach and all that stuff. And you know, some of these guys were just like, they were really engaged, and a lot of them, you realize that they just didn't care. All they wanted was money from the rich Americans. And you realize that it was very heartbreaking, because, you know, if you think back to the Afghan history, and, you know, since the Soviet invasion, and when the country was essentially destroyed, and then the resources were fairly plundered, and then you know, it was a warlord society after that, and then you know, post 9/11, it's been a war since the last 17 years. Like, the idea of a bunch of country bumpkins down in Helmand having somebody up in Kandahar who's not even the same tribe as them tell them that they need to listen to whatever and be proud of being an Afghan in general, it's like, that is, you might as well tell me that, like, somebody on the moon says that because we're all from the same galaxy, we should band together. It's like, what the hell are you talking about?
A majority of those people have zero idea of, like, regional or international politics.
Yeah,
like, they're like, whatever, man. This is my valley where we want to farm.
Yeah, we want to feed our family, not get our heads chopped off by an angry other tribe, and then, you know, do what's right by our tribe. So family, tribe first, and then, you know, the idea of a nation to them is very, like, it's very nebulous. It's an ethereal concept that just doesn't register. So that was when I was like, I started losing sort of hope, and it kind of broke my heart to be there anymore. I was just like, you know, I'm busting my ass to try to build a lasting messaging program here that's not going to survive as soon as I leave. I knew it was all sort of futile, and I knew that they didn't care, and I was just like, wow, that was very disheartening towards the end of the deployment. But then, you know,
The thing about Afghanistan is that nobody has given a clear and concise, like, mission. Like, what's the end state? It's hard to say we lost or won a war when you don't even tell us what losing or winning looks like. You know, it's like, we're just there trying to make it better. Like, the people that are there, like when you were there, when I was there, when other guys are there, like, everyone's there trying to make it better. Some dudes are just assholes and just want to go, you know,
yeah, and they
kept
pushing when we were going through EMV and the workup. It was like, hey, you need to be doing counterinsurgency, not looking for a gunfight. But then we get there, and Sangin's so damn violent that all you end up is gunfights. And so trying to do counterinsurgency is actually really fucking hard because security is such a problem.
Well, plus counterinsurgency can't last when you're doing 7-month deployments because every fucking unit's going to do it differently. And
they just knew that they needed to wait you out, and it didn't matter to them.
Exactly.
And then the other piece of that is that once you keep restricting the ROEs for the grunt on the ground who doesn't care about political decisions, he's like, if you're not going to let me shoot back and you're still making me patrol, basically all you're doing is just baiting me with my life out here.
Yeah.
And that made me really mad as well, being the guy who was supposed to be covering them with artillery. And I was like, you know, I basically couldn't drop a bomb for them until somebody was hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
That made me really, really frustrated for those guys, and I felt like I was failing them somehow. And then, like, But to his credit, like I do have some leadership issues with our battalion commander at the time. However, he was so damn aggressive, and the S3 and the XO were on board with this as well, that as soon as it looked like anybody was going to get hurt, he was like, damn the rules. He's like, I'm the battalion commander. I will eat these consequences. He gave the guys top cover in a way that he wasn't supposed to be doing. And so I was dropping bombs on shit preemptively that were like, I guarantee you they were valid targets. However, it was like, he could have gotten in trouble if you'd really needled down into the technicalities of this shit. But I think that saved a lot of guys, because there were points where I was dropping as close as 100 meters from friendlies.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, like I was like, get in your MRAP. I'm about to blow the roof off here, and we did. And during a really bad fight down in Kalia, guys, I mean, we had to roll tanks in at one point, and they were just like, they were main gun rounding houses and all kinds of stuff. It was really rough down there. That's where we had a couple guys from 2.8 and a few guys from 1.7 were KIA, and that Chris Lewis and one of my corporals, Magliolo, they really earned their keep during that fight. Like, Lewis was Winchestering HIMARS batteries into bad guy country, and at one point one of my JFOs, Magliolo, was like calling in a medevac, controlling ECAS, and helping Lewis drop HIMARS while carrying a casualty on his back. And this is a corporal. I tried to write him up for the Bronze Star, and I was told, like, no, you need to write him up for a NAM. And I was like, what? It was that political bullshit about rank,
Dude, we make fun of the Army for how many awards they give their guys, but some dudes would, sometimes it's like, so back to like what I've said before, this podcast was definitely a platform that I put out here for people to tell stories like that, because everyone that's been to like Afghanistan or, in actual combat and stuff knows there are guys that did things in combat that should have been recognized that just never were, or it was like, okay, hey man, thanks for coming. Here's like here's a whatever, something basic.
Well, yeah. And what they did is they took Magliolo's accomplishments and rolled them up into the platoon commander's award.
Yeah,
and it was like, granted, he was there too, and like, I don't want to take away from this guy. He may very much deserved it, but it became kind of a zero-sum game where like we can't recognize Magliolo for this action because it takes away from the lieutenant's achievements, which is like, hey man, like we can recognize them both. Like,
yeah,
this
what's
doesn't
the issue?
have to be we're not taking water out of one guy's cup to fill the other. Like, we got
if two people did heroic things and two people did heroic things,
exactly.
It's like it's not that hard of a thing,
Yeah. So,
yeah, it is what it is, man. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, everybody bitches about the award system and stuff like that. Sometimes we say we have too many awards. On one hand, you want stuff to be legitimate, like you want someone to be awarded something that they actually earned. And dude, I remember sitting in a Purple Heart ceremony, and the dudes in the audience. This is at the base theater, I think, at Camp Lejeune. And one of the dudes is like, "Oh, look, so and so's up there. Like, he didn't even get, he wasn't even blown up that much." But like, people are talking shit about him, like, get their Purple Heart and shit. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Wow. So it's like
that's one thing that has always driven me crazy about the militaries in general, is that we feel. I think a lot of us all joined because we wanted to feel big and bad, and I think that a lot of us sort of manifest that by trying to tear everybody else down. It's just like, you can always say somebody had it harder than you, yes, but that doesn't take away from what you did. Hey, look, that guy's at Pogue. Great. He still signed the same fucking contract you did. Like, give him some credit. I've
said it before and I'll say it again. There's someone that's always done more than you, and there's someone that's always done less than you, and that's a fact. That's a fact. And guys get all like big-headed about their service, and it's like, dude, hey man, it's cool. You should be proud of your service and stuff like that. But to down somebody else, like, I don't know.
I really hate all that. Maybe I'm sensitive to it because I've been called a pogue once or twice as an artilleryman.
No, you get over that. Usually it's the guys that don't know anything doing that, or they're just fucking around with you. But like, what I was gonna say was, dudes talk about wanting to do something for like veteran suicide and shit like that, but then you have guys talk about their service online, and all the dudes like, you didn't do shit. Oki's not a deployment. Kuwait's not a deployment. And I'm on that boat. I'll joke around like that, like, oh, Kuwait must have been rough,
If you're talking to like somebody who's very, very close and they know you're kidding, but somebody can internalize that shit, man. Some
dudes take it too far. It's just like everything else. Like, you can harass a dude a little bit, but when you start like when you start making it like super personal, or you just go over the lines, it's
yeah.
like, dude, you're kind of being a dickhead, But
yeah, I really disagree with that. I try to talk to my Marines about that, even today. Just like, hey, look, just shut your mouth, do your job, and be proud of what you've done. And you can talk about it with people who know, but like, don't ever take away from anybody else. How would you feel if somebody took away from you? So
yeah, it's good stuff. But back to what you were talking about with ROEs and stuff like that. 3-6 wasn't bad. The battalion commander, who only was there for a few of the strikes.
Well, you guys were there in like a real rough time in Marcia, right?
No, well, I was there on their second pump. Their first time was when they actually did the clear, and then I came back. I came out for the second time around, which was like the next year.
Yeah.
But the battalion commander was all about like, hey, if they're doing something bad, fucking strike them. Like, here's the thing. But he was also he gave really good guidance. Like, we're not just going to go randomly blow up houses or anything like crazy, like, because it's suspected whatever. Yeah. Like, if we see something wrong, then we're going to take care of it. And that was cool.
That was something that happened with us too. And I will admit that I got a little trigger happy probably towards the middle. And thankfully I had a pretty level-headed OPSO and EXO who would be on the floor and be like, wait, like,
yeah,
confirm, like, easy killer. Like, it's easy to go bloodthirsty, and I had a tally of kills on the board at one point, and my OPSO walked in and he saw it and he like erased it, and he was like, "Don't do that." And I was like, at first I just thought he was being like an asshole, and then I like, years later I didn't spare a thought for it again until much later, and then I remembered that, and I realized I was like, he was trying to make me take this seriously and not seem like a scoreboard, which is the right approach, and I was like, wow, okay.
It's not a game; it's a professional. It's a professional.
And if you start treating it that way, then you're going to start looking for things, and then it's confirmation bias at that point. You're going to get sucked into a target, and then you're just going to blow shit up that doesn't need to get blown up.
Well, as easy as it was to work with 3-6, which was still restrictive at the time. It wasn't like it was. I don't want people to think that we were just letting loose hellfires, all through the Marja area. It's still a pretty restrictive process, and I think I went into detail about it a couple podcasts ago of the actual like targeting process. So I'm not going to go through it again, but what I had with 3-6 was completely different than what I had as an advisor team, because as an advisor team, we don't own the battle space. We were in 3-4's battle space, and 3-4's battalion commander was not having it. Like, I remember being pinned down. Like, literally pinned down. I got a Harrier on station. He sees the target. And it's just me being pinned down because I'm on a rooftop. I was on the rooftop watching an area as we were having a KLE. It was actually the last mission we did, in Afghanistan, and denied the mission because the guy was standing next to a mud wall. Like, it wasn't even a compound; it was a wall. And I'm literally laying.
So he's taking that whole civilian structures thing really seriously.
Yeah, and I'm literally laying flat on my back, trying to be as small as I can behind one sandbag. I had one sandbag high, and rounds are just flying over my face. And I have the what was the ISR piece, the eyepiece, the actual one that you could hold it up to your eyeball. The little one.
Well, they're calling it the SIR now. The one
Soldier ISR is what we called it.
Yeah. The SIR.
So I had that one, and I was like, I was talking to the Harrier. I had the radio in one hand, I had that in one hand, and just rounds are flying over. And I had Fosberg on the other day. He was there, and him and my major, I remember my major peeked his eyeballs just over the edge of the roof, and he's like, "Kramer, are you okay?" And I'm like, I'm just. Can we get some fire on this guy, or what's up? They thought I was gonna get fucking schwacked up there, and I did too. I was fucking scared, but to be in a moment like that, and you hear that your request for fire gets denied, man.
Yeah. I've thrown a trash can or two across the COC before.
Man, that's happened a couple times. That happened a couple times when I was out there, and I was like, fuck 3-4, fuck them. I hate them. I hate the battalion commander. That was just, to me, that was bullshit. But it is what it is. So as an IO guy, I got lucky when I was with 3-6, back to 3-6, my arty officer got pulled to go do IO. And which was cool because that's all he did. He got pulled and he's like, hey, look, this is going to be kind of a full-time job, so I need you to take over the fire section and do it by yourself.
Oh, that's neat. That's good for you.
And as a sergeant, I was over there doing all the fire stuff, and I somehow talked the regimental FSCC into giving us approval for HIMARS at the battalion level.
We showed up with that, so which was great. But
really?
That's pretty awesome for you to have swindled that as a sergeant.
Yeah, and we actually got a strike out of it too. So it was like the first strike like that, and we were like, "Fuck yeah, this is sick." But how was it working with IO and doing the messaging and like it's kind of a weird thing because you have.
I mean, I came up with my own. So I had my own interpreter. Who was just an awkward guy, but.
Did you guys use the radio in a box and stuff?
Yeah, we had it was a whole little radio station down in the basement of our.
CSC. I remember that at Jackson.
Yeah, because we had so it used to be in one of like the bunkers, but then I moved it into that basement.
It was still there the next year.
Yeah, the district stability teams were not happy about that. The USAID they used to use that as their KLE room, but then the battalion commander was like, "Fuck them, this is my building," and I was like, "They can take KLEs in their office." I was like, "Okay," so I put it in there and. I had that playlist that I had to sort of curate, and it's all the greatest hits of the Hindu Kush, I guess. Radio Sangin 100 FM, and I would get on every now and then and like slip in an ASA bass song or something like that, just to be an asshole and like
bring a little culture to the area.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny, but the one time I slipped a Britney Spears song into the playlist just. To be funny, the OPSO actually turned on the radio to show somebody what we were doing, and I got so much trouble. Yeah, man.
Did you have the little burner phone and like the number they could call into?
We had the burner phone, and then we had messaging boxes, and so like half the patrols I did were out to like check on, the civil affairs projects, the high school that was being built, and there were these like ammo cans where they could do suggestion boxes for like. Questions that we could ask the district governor, and so I'd like go out with a set of keys and like open those up and take all these suggestions home and have my interpreter go through them, and it was like it's basically like a community message board almost. But we just sort of made that up. Like they were supposed to do a call-in show. We had done that before, but like half the time it was just like people would just prank call you, so you're just like say "fuck America" and then hang up or. Something like that. It ended up not being worth it. And then I had regiment sort of breathing down my neck to push things that they were trying to push. But like I said, I hadn't done any of the training, and so like they were like asking for like all these lines of effort, assessments, and all these reports that I didn't know how to write, and I didn't care to. And my CO was like, "Fuck them." He's like, "This is RAO. They don't know what's going on in here." He's like, "You pitch a plan to me, and we will run with it." And so. It was basically me and the battalion commander just making shit up as we went along, which ended up turning out he was really happy with it. So, I mean, I don't know whether I think regiment just kind of like wrote us off after a while. We're just like 1-7's going to do what they're going to do, but IO was just like to me it was a lot of community outreach, and then the FET they were actually like they were shockingly useful as an intelligence gathering tool. So what ended up happening with IO is I ended up getting switched into this intel cell that we created. It was me and our S2 and a couple of the enablers and, like some of the British guys that were there. And, we just brought in all these random heads, and it was just like, look, all of you talk to people out there, and we can map the sort of human terrain this way. So the FET women were a great tool because they were the great divide of 50% of that population. I mean, 50% of the population is female, and we're not supposed to speak to them. And they hear everything. Yeah. They're treated like furniture. But now they have somebody
it's so weird.
Somebody who wants to listen to them. And so they would just drop dimes on everybody. And so it was great. You'd sit there with them, and they would just like, all these women would just basically gossip to our FET Marines about whose husband was Taliban, who was responsible for this, just like, so you start building this map of who is who coming from the women in town through the FET. And so like everybody was like, joking around. It was like, oh, we shouldn't have women out here. And I was like, fuck you, dude. These are the best intel source we've got out here. Like they are gold. I wish I had 4 more. I never
actually worked with them.
Yeah.
So I never really had like I'd see them every once in a while. They'd come into the FOB or whatever, but I never actually like went out on a patrol or did anything with them.
Those women did a fantastic job. I was really happy to pull all that stuff, and it was very useful to the S2. So yeah, I mean, so we did that, and then we had the S2 or the S2 guys and the PGSS guys would come in, and we would establish areas of interest for them to scan when we didn't have anything else to do, and then occasionally some, 3-letter agency guys would show up and tell us some spooky thing that they were doing, and it's just, or they would just randomly show up with like some tier 1 guys and then just like kill somebody, and then we'd just be like, okay, we're clean up our mess, bye, and then just like fly away, be like, fuck, we promised somebody we wouldn't shoot up this neighborhood, and they just did it. It's like,
such is life sometimes. That sucks, man.
But yeah, so then we wrapped up. We fought it out pretty good for 7 months, and then came back. 2-7 ripped out with us, and then I pretty much immediately left for First Anglico. I was supposed, so I got an invitation to MARSOC to go to ANS, and then my battalion commander wouldn't sign the papers. He was being a jerk. It was just like, I don't want to lose you as an artillery officer. I was like, dude, I'm up to PCS anyway.
Yeah.
And he just was like, he took my MARSOC papers and he put them in his desk and he locked the drawer, and he's like, I'll talk to you about this after I get back from EMV. I was like, when is that? He goes, 30 days. And I was like, sir, I will have left, and ANS will have already classed up. I was like, this is the only time I can do this. So I didn't get to do it, and so I never got to try.
How would the process work for an officer, for an RD officer? Because I didn't think it's kind of a harder process for you guys than it is for like the infantry officers, right?
It's only harder because, it's not harder than infantry officers necessarily. It's hard for officers, period, because it can be any combat arms MOS, and you get completely retrained. You basically go through IOC, and then you get the critical skills operator stuff on top of it. So for me, or for officers, you have to be a first lieutenant for at least a year and a captain for no more than a year. That's your window, which is exactly a 2-year window. And my deployment was smack dab in the middle of that. This was my second attempt to go to MARSOC. The first attempt, the ANS classed up like right when I was leaving for Afghanistan, and then the second one was classing up like right as I was getting back. And so, because he wouldn't sign my papers, I missed both. And that's all the window you get.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will waiver some people if you're like a known stud, but like I was just like some random artillery officer. And one of the things that happens with artillery officers a lot, because we're always with the infantry, our fitness reports are written by infantry officers. And so they're not going to fuck over in their lineal standing of all their rankings of the officers in their company. They're not going to rate you above their guys because you're an attachment. So you always get the lowest fitness report in the company, regardless of how well you do. It's just a known thing. So when you go before the promotion board, usually if you've been attached with the infantry, they'll just discard your infantry fit reps because they're just like, look, we know that these are going to be trash.
That's a wild. That's weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but I understand. I get it.
You understand why they're looking out for their own people. But
they look out for their own guys for sure.
Yeah. So I missed out on MARSOC, but then it kind of worked out great because I got First Anglico. So we landed, and nobody from 311 came to receive us the night we arrived. And the Marine Corps order said that you're supposed to stay with your deploying unit for 90 days. And that was due to 3-5 having that really hard deployment. And, you need to convalesce with your guys and have that sort of emotional support system. Well, 311 being right next door, they were like, you're not staying with them for 90 days. You're coming back tomorrow, the day after we got back from Afghanistan. We're supposed to be on our 96, and the battalion commander called us into his office. So we came off, was supposed to be our time, alone with our families.
Yeah.
We'd landed about 8 hours prior. So we landed at midnight, and he called us into his office at 8 a.m. So I had to wake up and go right back into the office.
I've had units do that. We're like, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, so he called us in. He was like, all right, I report in. I was like Captain Walker in 17 Fire Support Coordination Center reporting as ordered. And he goes, first of all, you're the 311 Fire Support Coordination Center. He's like, 17 doesn't exist anymore. You're coming back to us immediately. By the way, the Marine Corps Ball is this weekend, so you need to get tickets. And if you're not coming, you're going to be on duty this weekend.
Like, okay. Oh.
And then he goes, I know that you think you're special because you just came back from combat, but you're not the first Marines to go to combat, and you're not going to be the last. So it's time, now that you're home, it's time for you to actually go back to work.
I fucking hate it when people are like, I don't want you, you're not special. Don't think you're special. It's like, dude, I don't think I'm special, but I do think
I'm special, but I was getting shot at like 10 days ago. And so he was like, you're also going to the field for 2 weeks for Steel Night. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You want me to go tell my corporals who have been in combat not even a fortnight ago that they're going to go sit in the field in 29 Palms for 2 weeks. I was like,
yes. Yes,
so
I do expect you to say that.
Well, so what I did is the regimental commander had just gone forward. So Colonel Renforth was ripped out with us when we were leaving. So it was I was under RCT 6. So RCT 7 was taking over. So Colonel Renforth wasn't there. So I couldn't request mass to the regimental CO. But the senior battalion commander on deck was my battalion commander. So he was the acting regimental CO back on 29 Palms, which made him, because 7th Marines is the most senior, it's like the parent unit on 29 Palms, that made him like basically the most powerful man on the base. So I walked straight back next door and walked straight into his office. Like, sir, 311 says this, 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 and this. And he goes, yeah, you're not doing any of that. I was like, yes. So he gave us the top cover. And then I got called by the major in the FSCC, and he brings me at 6 and center in front of his desk, and he just fucking lifes me out for this. He's like, who the fuck do you think you are? Where do your loyalties lie? I was like, to my Marines in 1-7, the guys we were just there with, fuck you.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, man. Some people are just dicks like that.
It was such a joke. I was like, why on earth would I think any of this is a good idea? You want to send a brand new second lieutenant who's never been trained on theater-specific fires to do 3-4's mission readiness exercise when I just came from where they're going, and you're not going to let me go out and do their MRX. You're going to send me to Steel Night instead.
Yeah. I mean, I understand them wanting to get the most up-to-date information to help train the guys that are getting ready to go down seas. But again, you can't just tell a dude, hey, welcome back. Oh, by the way, I mean, they can, obviously, but it's such a dick move, and it fucks up morale so much.
And technically, it was against Marine Corps order, so I had that, in my pocket. So,
yeah, that's true.
Luckily, we got to stay with 1-7 for about 30 days, and then I PCS down to 1st Anglico. And when I arrived, they were still...
When was this? What year?
So this was 2013 now, January.
Okay.
So I PCS down to Pendleton. And, I got there, and Delta was still, I think they were just coming off deployment, or they weren't back yet, or something like that. And so I got, I listened to your podcast with Damaro, and he already covered all this stuff with the Japanese. So I got attached out for Dawn Blitz with them, and I had Damaro and Fernandez and Sanchez. And, we did that whole bonsai charge on San Clemente, which you guys already talked about, so I won't go over. It was but one story from that was pretty worth mentioning is that I remember Damaro was just you remember how intense he is, and how,
of course,
that sort of hateful gaze he can get.
He's still like that too.
You know what? Good. I hope he never changes, man. That guy is intense, and he gets results. But we were sitting on this Japanese carrier, and him being the RO with, I think he still had his saw at the time. He weighs about 1 million pounds, and we're sitting there waiting to board this Japanese Chinook, and I walk over, I was like, D, you okay, man? He's like, this fucking sucks, sir. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I just looked at him, and I was like, just remember that no matter what happens today, someone somewhere is going to go have something removed from their asshole at the hospital today. And so he started laughing, and I was like, all right, let's do this thing. And so we start doing that bonsai charge, and halfway down the food on the Japanese carrier was so bad that it was all these fish heads and rice kind of shit. There were scrambled eggs that had little shrimp in them. And everything was fish and soup and lots of white rice, and it was it was very. I don't eat a lot of that stuff, so we'll say I had gastrointestinal distress.
I've heard a lot of dudes come off the Japanese ship and are like, "Dude, I lost a ton of weight because there was nothing I could eat there."
So
or nothing I wanted to eat.
Yeah, and they were bless them. They wanted to have hospitality, so they were asking me to come to the wardroom. And I was trying to sneak MREs in between meals because that was the only thing I could eat.
They're super nice people. I had
they're so great, but it was just I couldn't stomach it, and I was sitting there just sweating in this staff meeting, and they're speaking only in Japanese, and I didn't have an interpreter. They're like, Anglico needs to send a guy out to the Japanese. I was like, do I get an interpreter? They're like, no. I was like, okay, great. That's a good use of my time. So we came off the ship and we do that bonsai charge, and so like it's like really hot on the island, and we started running out of water very quickly, and we found out that the Japanese didn't have a resupply plan, and they're all just running in very lightweight sort of web gear kind of stuff, and there's a truck just driving behind them with all their packs, and we're carrying our main rucks, and we're wearing SAPI plates and carrying ammo and extra batteries for 3 days because we had no resupply plan with them because they didn't have the same gear in terms of radios to resupply batteries and all that. But so we weigh about 1 million pounds while we're doing this stuff, and we get to the end, almost down near Shoba, the impact area on the south side. We've been at it for about 7 miles and probably 8 hours, and all of a sudden my stomach is just like, oh my god, it's coming, it's going to happen. And like there's this like Navy bunker somewhere on the south end of that island, and you probably know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, on San Clemente,
on San Clemente,
or the castle.
Yeah, well, not the castle. That's like where we would stay when we were doing impact stuff. But it's like it's like a manned Navy bunker. I don't know what they do there. I think it's a secret facility.
Oh, so they monitor all the radar systems that are on the island. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
So I see that like on the horizon, and I'm like, I'm gonna make it to this thing and see if they have a toilet. So I've got cami paint on my face. I've got my weapon. I'm like pouring sweat. I've got all this shit, and I come banging on this door, and this very confused Navy lieutenant opens the door, and there's this huge Marine and covered in cami paint, and I just look at him in the eye, and I'm carrying my weapon, and I'm like, "Hey man, you got a toilet?" And he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of my way!" I like face palm him out of the way, and I just run in, and I just absolutely annihilate his bathroom, and he's like, "You can't come in here. This is a secret facility." I'm like, "I'm gonna shit on your floor if you don't get out of my way." Like
this is happening, man.
This is happening.
Let me know how you want it to go down because it's happening either way.
So yeah, that was that whole thing with the Japanese, and they were just like straight up bonsai charging around, and
so I've talked a lot about the different stuff we've done at ANGLICO on different shows and stuff like that. I mean, you were a hearse master, so we got to do a lot of spy stuff. We had you. Who else was a hearse? We had you. CSON was a hearse master. Do we have anybody else on the team?
Not on the team. In the company, we would use Gariza and Brenke.
So we got to I think Brenke was. Yeah. We got to take advantage of the MARSOC tower next door and do a bunch of fun, do a bunch of slides over there, and then obviously our relationships with the Air Wing, because we have so many pilots at ANGLICO, was great, because then we got to go and do it live.
Well, and
fast
especially
roping
living
and
with them on the ships, you can just walk down to the ready room, and I realized after that deployment that as a JTAC, I don't think that entire deployment I ever actually formally submitted a JTAR or an ASR.
No.
I would just walk down to the ready room and just have a face-to-face and just be like, hey, man, can you do this? And they'd be like, yep. And I'll be like, all right, I'll send you an email. And that was it.
I think ANGLICO, if anything, it taught me that there's a lot of stuff that you can do in the Marine Corps that you just don't realize. Like, you just got to ask. Like, people are really willing to come out and do some cool stuff because it helps them. When I'm talking specifically aircraft.
Well, that's how when we got dirt deaded, when Fix 7 got sent down to Djibouti, that's how we ended up having such a good time. Like, so the lucky thing for us is like, one, Recon really looked out for us.
That's so. Before you get into this story, real quick, I want you to pull back a little bit, and talk about because you and your team had a different experience with your workup because you did a lot of work with the MRF,
right.
So the Maritime Raid Force, and I'll preface that real quick with the unfortunate thing that happens a lot of times with the firepower control teams and stuff like that is, unless you're being utilized like you traditionally would, like the guys that went to Afghanistan and were doing the Georgian liaison team missions and stuff like that, like when you're getting attached to like recon to help them out, they don't want your entire little firepower control team. They want the JTAC, basically the JTAC, and that's it. And so it's kind of a crappy situation for them, but I would like to hear what the workup was like for you that was, attached to them for almost all of their events.
Right. So it all started because they, being at the MU headquarters, technically, as Recon and ANGLICO are at the headquarters
S3,
level. Yeah. So they were like, hey, we need an action officer for every event that we're going to do. So everybody had to basically jump on a grenade and plan somebody else's training at some point. And so I ended up being the action officer for Recon's ground training. And at the same time, they were asking for a JTAC from us. And Watt remembered that I had all that experience with the boat company. So he's like, you are good with amphib stuff. And he's like, and you have a lot of combat experience from Afghanistan. He's like, would you like to go over to Recon? And I joined specifically to go to recon. I chose the Marine Corps because I wanted to be a recon Marine. And so I jumped at the opportunity, and I was just like, yeah, you better not give this to somebody else. Like, I will take it. And so they have so many JTACs, but I don't want to say that they're bad JTACs, because they're not. They have some very fine JTACs. Like
for the most part, they're not that good, and it's not their fault.
I mean,
Let me preface that with
you get some really great guys like Matt and stuff, but like, yeah, they're just too overburdened.
Yes, exactly, that's what I wanted to say.
They have sniper quals, they have Hearst quals, they have assault breacher quals, and
Yep.
JTAC ends up taking a very back seat half the time. So they would come out with us, and it became a mutually beneficial relationship, because they would give us. They had all this clout. One, like, the interesting thing between Anglico and Recon is that we're both MEF headquarters group assets. We're both technically conventional units, but because of their reputation from as a direct action unit from Vietnam and subsequent conflicts, they enjoy a certain amount of mystique that gives them some free passes in a lot of things, i.e. like ship's tax.
Yeah,
like they provided no ship's tax, even though they were one of the bigger units on the San Diego, and they would try to take they're like, hey, we want 3 guys from Anglico to be in the trash compactor. I was like, you understand that there's only 4 of us, right? There's like 4 enlisted guys. It's like, you just wiped out 80% of my team.
Yeah.
So they weren't. So I got pulled over to them during the workup. I would go with them to their ground interop, their all the SOTG training that Major Opalski over there would come up with, and he was very good. He was former Delta Troop commander, and he came up with a lot of really good real-world training. And then we did all the maritime stuff, VBSS, and we would drive up to like Point Magoo and do gas and oil platform takedowns with the Huey guys, roping on or coming up from a boat with hook and ladder. And so we did all of that, starting in the pool, and then, I had to get very up to speed very, very quickly. And like, I thought I was pretty slick on the ground from being with 1-7 for so long. And I hit the ground at Recon, and I realized the first day these dudes walked over and they descended on me like a pack of wolves, and they were just like ripping shit off my gear. They're like, get rid of that. You don't need this. Get rid of cool guy patches. And like, we're professionals here. Like, take your fucking IR American flags off of everything. Like,
that was a really good team on that deployment. I really enjoyed working with those guys.
And
they were very like, keep your boots bloused unless you're doing something where you don't need them bloused, and then like keep your sleeves rolled. Like, they didn't
they were
cuff their sleeves and shit.
They were very smart, because Zuber, the officers they had were good, but their staff NCO Corps was fantastic.
Exactly, yeah.
And
real professionals, real combat hardened dudes.
Yeah,
Tim
and they
Williamson was over
that,
there. He was a great dude.
Oh God, Williams, he was fucking fantastic.
Or, yeah, Williamson.
And then Jarvis, Master Sergeant Jarvis.
Jarvis, yep.
He's a legend, and Gunny Duncan and all those guys. They understood that they, being the quote unquote special guys on the boat, were going to be skylined their entire time there. So there was no worse thing that they could do than try to walk around acting like they were better than anybody, because if they kept their head down, then they could actually enjoy a lot more freedom of maneuver and get away with more shit. So you could do better training, but you had to play by certain rules just to keep yourself from being visible.
You got to play the game.
Very smart way to do things. And so they showed up, and they were just like, hey, take your Anglico bullshit out of here. He's like, take these patches off, get rid of all these extra pouches. You want to be as light as possible. He's like, I understand you got JTAC things you got to do, but they completely turned me around on PCCs and PCIs. Like, walking out the door with them, pre-combat checks and inspections, like, they were so damn thorough in mission planning and preparation that I was like, this is way more professional than I ever saw anybody going out the gate with. Like, going into combat in Afghanistan, like, not to knock 1-7, but these guys were so detailed oriented. Their planning process, they had down to a timeline that was like very fine, and then they would do these rehearsals that were actually applicable, and then they would stand there and do full comm checks and everything in such an organized manner that I took a lot of that and plagiarized the hell out of it in our SOPs. So that was very, very beneficial. And the added benefit of that is we started qualling their JTACs up and getting them better. And so in return, they started giving us those jump seats. So we were able to get the 2 teams initially of, a JTAC and an RO, and then we were able to go again because we didn't embarrass them. They were very worried that we were going to embarrass them. And then they started giving us jumps, and then we got to do lots of Hearst with them, and then we started enjoying a lot closer relationship, and they gave us those ITVs, those little Barbie Jeeps that made...
that are no longer in use.
That are no longer... Yeah, but they allowed us to get off of the ship.
Yep.
They gave us excuses like, hey, we need somebody who's this mobile. And it's like, and we were the only ones who could raise our hand and be like, hey, we can do that.
Yeah.
And so we ended up inserting ourselves in a way that guaranteed us work. And that was Recon's doing. And even when we got on ship, eventually, the MU command, which was strangely on the San Diego sort of anti-Anglico, I think they thought that we were too cool for school kind of guys.
The MU command on the San Diego, or are you talking about the MU command in general?
The MU command Bravo. I can't speak for you guys on the Macon Island.
We had a pretty good relationship with the command element, as long as
the master sergeant. Who was the ops chief?
Master Guns, man. I'm not going to say
on the command Bravo deck. It was that master sergeant who was the
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I don't remember his name.
Him and the XO, who oddly enough had been a first Anglico guy. I thought he would have loved us. He was very like, use Anglico to do bullshit stuff. So they wanted to make me
really
like they wanted to make me like the night watcho.
Well,
in the SAC.
yeah.
And I was like no.
Yeah.
I was like, we are 2 Anglico officers on this boat, and we were part of the ship's defense team because of all of our optics. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And
you have to fight off a bunch of the bullshit, and that's where good leadership comes into play. Like when I think it was you guys were during the workup. You guys were up at Fort Hunter Liggett, and they were like, "Hey, all your guys are going to be guards for the fake EPWs."
Yeah,
and you and Watt were like, "This is stupid. Send them back on the helicopter back to Pendleton, and they'll do real training."
We sent them home, and I stayed back with Recon, and I did long range raids for 5 days. I don't think I slept because I was doing our workup as Anglico and the Recon workup. I was trying to insert the team as much as I possible, but it ended up just like you said, they just wanted me to go out there.
If anything, the team would be used to help out the support by fire position or the headquarters area pulled back.
I think they got into some stuff like that occasionally. It's like, hey, we'll have some JFOs with the outer cordon, the BLT guys or something like that. But it wasn't that often. But I ended up doing all these raids, and I between that and our workup, I think I slept in my own bed in a 3-month period. I think 4 times. Oh, yeah. Because I was constantly in the field.
Dude, the MU workup is the worst.
It was tough. Yeah.
It's just like always going on. It's like for months you're dealing with it. You're doing shit.
And the at-sea periods, you're kind of just like you're stuck out there.
And there's
nothing you can do.
There's always issues to deal with. Like you're going on ships, so space is obviously at premium. You're trying to jockey with the fucking S4 guys to like the landing force guys. Like, hey man, let me get my trailer too. Let me get my Humvee and my trailer. It's
we had trouble even getting billeting. Like they did, because the point I was going to make was that the MU command deck, they were just like, fuck Anglico. So when we were moving on to the ship, they just kept like, the embark officer was just like, we were going to put you here, but now we're going to move you down. And it's like, they were basically going to put our guys in like the fucking, like the oil
dungeon
room
in
or
the
something
bottom
like
of the ship.
just dungeon. I was like, fuck no. So I was like, I went and I told Duncan, the other the recon platoon commander, I was just like, he's like, don't worry about it, we got you. And then they just pulled our guys into the recon berthing.
Yeah.
And so if it hadn't been for them giving us that top cover, then our guys would have been just like, living in the trash compactor for eight months.
It's easy. It's easy to take a group of people that you see aren't, or you think aren't doing anything, and give them some stupid menial task that is,
because they didn't understand what we do
exactly.
Whereas every time we've gone ashore, everybody in the joint environment has heard of us. Like Marines don't know who the hell we are, and then in the joint environment, I was down at this Navy SEAL exercise, this Trident thing, this last year, and I had a Navy SEAL
06 come up to me and he was like, how can I get a ton of Anglico guys? Like, I just want Anglico guys around because he's like, you're Marines, so we like what you've got. And he's like, but you speak joint environment. And I was like, please put in formal requests. So I was like, and I told him, I put him in contact with the Anglico CO. I was just like, look, this is how you do it. And he's like, but among Marines, like, no, they're just like, who the fuck are these guys? They're JTACs. Okay, whatever. Put them in the boiler room.
Most people don't even know what a JTAC is, unless they're like
exactly.
a combat arms guy that's dealt with them. They're like, JTAC? What?
So that deployment was frustrating. The workup, all that time. So when we got on ship, though, I managed to start basically horse trading with Recon and being like, look, I will go with you if you bring my team. And then I got us dirt deaded in Djibouti. Otherwise, they were just going to let us rot because we didn't make it up to Kuwait where you guys were. So I was like, we need to go ashore and do some training. Otherwise, we're going to go insane on this boat. So we hit the ground there, and Recon basically was like, hey, we need JTAC support. And that's how we finagled it. And I got ashore with, I don't think I got the ITV ashore, but I got us ashore. And as soon as I hit the ground there, I found that there were TACPs there and a PJ squadron and these Army guys that had a fires section. And so I just started walking around from office to office being like, hey, you want to do her stuff? Do you want to go do fire stuff? Do you want to do this? And then we were teaching it was Jolly Green, the rescue squadron. We taught them CAS. They wanted to learn CAS and rotary wing 5 lines. Yeah. And then the Recon guys wanted to refresh some of their Hearst masters. So we were like, hey, we'll link you with Jolly Green, and then we'll go out and we'll be the JTACs, and then we'll bring the TACPs along who are going to bring some French Mirages. And we just cobbled together this basically little joint task force. And we just started making work for ourselves. It was, and the MU representative down there was this major who was like 2 months from retirement. He was like Murtaugh in Lethal Weapon. He was just like, I'm too old for this shit.
Just do whatever.
He was like, as long as you don't kill anybody that's not supposed to die, he's like, I don't care what you do. I was like, do you want like a con op for this? And he was like, nope. He's like, just back brief me if something goes wrong. I was like, okay.
Overseas, like Kuwait, Djibouti, places like that are definitely awesome places to train because you can do exactly that. We did the exact same thing in Kuwait. We're like, hey, there's a they don't call it a squadron. I think they call it a company of Apaches over here. And we're like, let's go talk to them. So we go over and talk to the Apaches, and we ended up doing Apache CAS like 2 to 3 times a week for 3 months.
Yeah, I was jealous of that. We had French Mirages that we were working with probably once a week out there, and man, they're tough to work with. Those guys, they're like, they want everything in like WGS 83 lat long.
Really?
Yeah, so you're like reprogramming your dagger. Like, fuck, I got to remember how to change these settings. Like, oh my god.
That's one of those things you get taught, and then you're like, we'll never use that.
Exactly, and then you're like trying to remember back to that, and then, but yeah, we did a shit ton of stuff, and then we worked with the SEALs a little bit, and then Recon came and went, and we would do ranges with them or go out on raids or whatever, and it was fun, and then then that whole Yemen mission came around, and we just rotted off the coast of Yemen until 26 MU came and relieved us.
Luckily I was in Kuwait for all of that. Yeah, we just caught the port call on the way out in Oman.
I don't know if you can see it. Hang on, I don't know if I can tilt this camera in a way that you can see the rug out there. You see like the corner of that.
Is that one
rug?
From Saudi Arabia?
That's one of the ones that I stole from that tent in Saudi Arabia that the BLT ended up having to tear heaven and earth apart looking for.
Dude, those tents were fucking ridiculous. That whole thing was... Saudi Arabia was the grossest I've ever felt, I think, and during a field op. Yeah.
So, anyway, so that was that deployment, and then I stayed with Delta with you until I was hoping that Watt was going to move on and I would get a shot at being the Delta commander, but he was holding on until he PCS'd, and then I EAS'd towards the end there. We worked with the British my last week. Yep. My last day in the Marine Corps active duty, I was thrashing everybody in the surf.
Yeah, what was the 148 battery commandos?
And then I walked into IPAC to get my DD-214 still soaking wet from the beach, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. It was like, hey, I was working to the minute I left.
Yeah.
So then
I was not.
Yeah, you went to the MU and then decided not to deploy, right?
No, I deployed. I did
you
another.
did?
Yeah, I did another deployment. Came home.
You know what? That's right. I remember talking to you like over Messenger while you were in the SAC. You know?
Yeah, what happened was I came back and I was like, hey, I'm getting out. Like that just cemented my reasonings for getting out, doing that second MEU. That was worse than the first one. And I was like, but, I'm a waste here at the MEU. Like it's the down cycle. The MEU's, not going to deploy for over a year. There's no reason for me to be here. And I know I have experience and knowledge I want to pass on before I leave. So I contacted 11th Marines. I was like, hey, I want to come over there and teach the TACP primers and go to the field, because I was one of a handful of JTAC E's evaluators on the West Coast.
Especially in the battalions. Like you go to the regiment and they have no E's.
Yeah, and I talked to them and they're like, yeah, when do you want to come over? And I was like, all right, well, I was like, how about August or what? It was either August or September. And that gave me a couple months of like enjoying the down cycle of being, part of a unit that's not doing anything. And then like a month before I was supposed to go over there, they called me and they're like, hey man, hey, you're supposed to be coming over here in like September, right? And I'm like, yeah, I talked to Master Gun so-and-so and supposed to. And they're like, yeah, that's cool. But if you come over, then you have to do the UDP in October. They're like, that's the only way you can come over here. And I'm like, dude, fuck you, man. I'm like, I'm getting out. Like that'll put me right up to my EAS if I take at that time I had like 80 days of terminal saved up. And I was like, you know what? Don't ever fucking call me. I was like, don't ask me for anything. I was like, that's why people are getting out. I was like, that's the bullshit right there. Like, I'm trying to help you out. I didn't even have to extend a hand of courtesy to you. And that's how you're going to fucking respond. Like, hey man, well, yeah, you can come over here, but only to go on this deployment. And I got it. You're shorthanded on JTACs and shit. But that's the reason for me to come over and help.
Bitch work.
Yeah, I'm going to come over and help build up the fucking JTAC core rather than going out and just being another body on a deployment. I was just like, I was super bitter. They also offered, and this will be interesting to you, they also offered when I got home, the ops chief over at Anglico was like, hey, you want to come back to Anglico? And I was like, sure. He's like, you can come back to Delta, but they're going out next week. They were basically going out on the MEU to replace, who replaced us.
But that was the one that did a lot of shit, right?
And I was like, no, man, I'm getting out. I'm not doing it. And then they ended up getting attached to a task force. They were the only people that got off the ship during that deployment. They got sent to Iraq.
They went to I thought it was Syria, but yeah, okay.
No, yeah, that was a different one. That was on mine. That team got sent to Syria, but that team got sent to Iraq and attached to a task force unit. And they brought one recon guy with them just because they needed a Puma operator. So I guess everybody, and I thought it was hilarious because recon, us and recon, everybody gives each other shit about who does what and everything like that. Yeah. And I just thought that was funny. And I was like fucking bummed. I was like, of course, the one I say no to, like they're out doing some cool shit in Iraq.
Yeah, and that happened to me three times at 4th Anglico. So, after I left active duty, I went to the reserves while I was in grad school and stayed with 4th Anglico, which is a totally different beast than active duty Anglico. So, I mean, they're deploying just as much, but as autonomous as we were as assault, we as assault just did our own thing. We did our own training, and the FICs got whole days where we were just, we as FIC leaders had our guys to do whatever we wanted with them. At the reserve side, you never are away from the platoon, and most guys can't even tell you what SALT they're in. They just know what platoon they're in.
Really,
and that's just a reservism, because when you're out there on a normal reserve weekend, you're trying to squish a month's worth of training into that drill weekend. So it's like, every daily admin task that would have happened, like, you need to go see the sergeant major about your enlistment package, or you need to go to dental, or all that stuff, all has to happen in 2 days. And so, like, you as a team leader never see your guys all in one place at one time. Did
you roll right into the reserves when you got out, or did you take some time off?
And then I stayed for about 6 months, and I got into a big fight with the CO and left, and dropped the RRR for about 2 months. I got into an argument with him because the OPSO at the time was a retrained like air signal guy, like a signal guy from the wing. Mm-hmm. And he retrained to artillery to come to Anglico. But he was like a major. He was like our OPSO. And he had just done his artillery safety test, and so he had a boner for it. And so he wanted us to do every 0802 in the company to do an artillery safety test. And to do that, it takes a week You have to have all of the pubs on hand. You have to have a regimental artillery chief or a battalion artillery chief on hand. A field artillery chief, a FAC. And then you have to have NFA-TIDs, GFTs, graphic firing tables, tabular firing tables, all this stuff. They didn't have any of that. He was like, sit down and take this test. And we're like, there's no fucking way we can accomplish this. And, oh, by the way, I was trying to get this one of my buddies, Joe Dewson, qualified, get his check ride done to send him to TACP school the next week so he could take a det out to Afghanistan that summer. I was like, this is my priority. I don't need to be playing fuck games with an artillery safety test that I don't have to take.
Yeah. And there's no reason you're not in a battery.
I was like, and so he was like, no one's impressed by your lip, Walker. He's like, get the fuck in there. He's like, just do it. So I refused to do it, and I tried to go back into the DVTE and finish Dewson's qualification. And he was like, who the fuck do you think you are? He's like, and I was like, sir, this is bullshit. And he was like, I don't care. And then Dewson went to TSP school, and he'd had almost zero prep time. And so like the instructors all agreed. They were like, hey, this guy's a fantastic human being who his leadership failed him, and so he didn't pass. And so I was like, now we just lost that school seat. Yeah. And it's like, you're sending guys to jump school before you're sending guys to TSP school. It's like, we're not paratroopers, man. We're not infantrymen.
Like, nobody's jumping into anywhere anytime
no one's
soon.
jumping into anything. Like, I know you think this is extreme sports that we're getting paid for on the weekends, but like, this is an insert method. If you land on the ground and you're not an infantryman and you can't drop a bomb, you are no good to anyone.
Yeah.
I was like, you need to get your fucking priorities in order. And so I had that discussion with the CO, and he told me I was like an insubordinate prick. And so I was like, okay, this will be my last drill. And so I left.
So how does that work? How can you go from like regular drill to like IRR? Because
it depends on whether you're on contract. If you're on contract, you're stuck.
Okay.
You have to keep showing up and drilling. But I didn't take any sort of bonus, and I did not do a contract. I was past my 8 years of obligated service at that point.
Yeah.
So I can drop to the IRR any day I want. So if someone so much as looks at me wrong in the S3 these days, I can literally just drop papers and walk out same day. It's that easy. So
it's really weird that you can just go in and out of it.
It is, and you can change units. You can pick which unit you want to leave or go to and when, as long as they will receive you and they have a slot for you.
Nice.
So like, there was a point where I live in New York now, and I work in television, and the public affairs office was like 4 blocks from my old apartment, and I was like, I see those guys everywhere at all the veterans events and the Headstrong Gala and so on and so forth, and they just work with TV people, and they do the parade every year.
Yeah.
And I was like, this would be what I'm doing, but I would be doing it in uniform. And
I got a buddy that works up there, McAdams.
So I was like, hey, I was like, can I come over to the PAO office and be a total poke? And I was like, this would be awesome. And they're like, no, we don't want an artillery guy in here. What would we do with you? And I was like, okay,
she'd be like, I also do messaging. Remember when
I was like, days? I do IO and I'm an actor. I was like, but yeah. And, so 4th Anglico was great. And, when I came back, I heard that the CO had changed over, and it was a former recon Bubba, and he was very aggressive, and the OPSO was a former recon guy. He was a pilot. His call sign was Fag, former action guy.
Oh, and, nice.
Yeah.
That's super random.
Yeah. His name is Cisparo. He was actually in recon with Rudy Reyes in dive school.
We'll have him come on the show sometime. The former action guy.
Oh yeah, I've got Rudy's phone number. I'll send it to you. I met him at the Headstrong Gala, and we hung out a bunch, especially after he found out I was with Alpha Company Recon. And he's super intense. That guy is just a ball of chaotic energy. He's just hard to keep up with. And so I went back to 4th Anglico, and I took over 3rd Brigade Platoon for a little bit. It was great, and I worked for a really, really great guy. And they kept offering me all these deployments, but they were all like, they offered me an SP MAGTF one, and I was like going to jump on it, because the SP MAGTF was going to Syria and doing a lot of good shit in Iraq at that time. And then the active duty guys all saw that the reservists were the Anglicos that were getting all the good missions because of that. So they're like, all right, no, we're going back to SP MAGTF, and you're going to go back to the Georgian rotational missions. And so we're like, all right, fuck. Okay, so we did a GLT rotation. I was like, I'm not going back to Afghanistan. Fuck that place. Like, it's dead to me. So I kept turning down deployments, but you know, I felt like my value at the company was added by the fact that I was a JTAC and a Hearst Master, and I could train all these guys to go out, and all the young officers were eager to go anyway. So,
and well, at the same time, you were going to school, correct?
Yeah, I was going to school, and then the reason I eventually left Anglico altogether was not because I timed out or anything. It was just because flying down to Florida every month, I kept missing auditions, and I got called. I was supposed to be on season 2 of The Punisher. They wrote a part specifically for me as continuity from the little thing I had done on season 1, and I was supposed to be a speaking role and everything. And they called me and they're like, "Hey, can you come in?" And I was like on my annual training, like the 2 weeks, and I was in the Caribbean.
You're like, sorry, I'm doing my cybersecurity cert right now.
Well, no, we were doing great shit. We were doing like VBSS and amphibious raids with these guys from we had a couple Navy SEALs, MARSOC, and ODA out with us, and it was great. We were just having it was like special operations heaven, where you eat steak flavored clouds and poop secrets. It was just amazing. And so, but I had to turn this roll down, and that kept happening. It was just like every time I would get a good audition for hey, oh, they want you on Law and Order, I'd be like, oh no, you have drill that weekend, and they say you can't reschedule. It's like, motherfuck. So I finally left, and now I'm at 2nd Battalion, 25th Marines up in Long Island, and I'm the air officer. And I got there in October, and
I didn't know you had switched.
Yeah, so I left back in October, and it's been great so far. Because we're not due to. They just came back from that deployment. The guys that you made the shirts for in the memorial, that was them. And now we're just basically rebuilding the battalion post that deployment, and so I'm one of 3 air officers in a battalion that probably has about 500 people in it, and we're the only JTAC, so I can sort of come and go a lot easier, and it's been working out. So this year, since I made that switch, I've been on 6 network TV shows, and it's been good. So
what's the struggle? What's the struggle for an actor? What's the initial this is the hardest part to get through, and then once you get past that?
One, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, because I didn't intend to do this. I came up here to do grad school to either go to the CIA or the FBI, and I got hired by the FBI, and I made it all the way through to the end to be a special agent. And I woke up one day and I just realized I wasn't happy. And I was like, I was going through the middle of my divorce, and I was just like, I just need a change of everything. I'm going to stay with the Marine Corps. I don't really want to be an investigator, which is essentially what you are as a special agent. You're a federal detective of some regard. And I was like, the only thing I was excited about for that job was to go to HRT, which they had called me, and they had guaranteed me a seat at selection. But I was like, this is a tier 1 team. If I don't make it, and I'm going to have to do 25 years here to retire, and I go do white collar crime in Topeka, Kansas, fuck, I should just stayed in the Marine Corps. Retire a hell of a lot sooner. So I was like, you know what? And while I was in grad school for global affairs and counterterrorism, I was working with all the veterans groups, and they all talked to each other, and I put out they put out a call. They were like, hey, this TV show on Netflix wants real veterans, and they don't ever tell you what it is, because they don't, especially when it's Marvel. It turned out to be The Punisher, and I sort of guessed it. I was like, I think this is The Punisher, and I was a big Punisher fan, so I had an Army PAO guy take a headshot for me and send it in, and I got picked, and I was on season 1, and then that got me into the Screen Actors Guild, which was insanely lucky, by the way. The hardest part for a new actor is getting into the Screen Actors Guild. That's one of the hardest things, because you have to either be an extra in enough jobs where you get 3 what are called waivers, something you did special in that where you're not just standing there. You have to speak, get a line, or do some specific action where they feature you pretty prominently in the movie. And it's very rare for you to get 3 as fast as I did. I got them in 3 months, which is, some guys will do it for 8 years and not get all 3.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's very hard, and you get paid like shit, and you're treated like dirt, and being an extra is very, very miserable. The other way to do it,
I've heard it's a very hierarchical society. When you're on set, it's you don't speak. You don't
it's
speak
union
to
rules.
Yeah,
there are union rules about it. Like, you will eat last. It's basically being like on a working party or being like a lance corporal, and it's just like pecking order on ship. You know, it's like if you're non-union, you have to work longer than anyone else. You usually have to show up at like 3 a.m. if it's a early morning call, whereas the regular actors are not going to show up till 7. You know, so it's like being gunny timed.
Yeah.
Out the ass, and then you're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to make direct contact with any of the primary actors and stuff like that. But like, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know the etiquette, so I just like walked up to John Bernthal and started talking to him, and then he got very friendly with me when he found out I was a Marine. And then a bunch of the guys from the show started coming out with the veterans groups because they're all supposed to be veterans in the show. So they came out like rock climbing with us, and they would take me to dinner and have me go through their scripts and stuff. So I had a very unusual, like, sort of very lucky start. How
much of it was luck though, and how much of it was you opening your mouth in a moment where a lot of people wouldn't have?
I'd say 50-50.
Because a lot of people
I was given the chance out of luck, but then I decided to open my mouth at the right moment.
Yeah.
So I'd say 50-50 there. But then after that, I was like, okay, I started doing a lot of research, and, you know, telling people that you're a Marine, it opens a lot of doors. It's I call it the M-bomb, you know, and it's like if you slip that into conversation with somebody, it's enough to impress them. They're going to see 1,000 actors in a day for a part, you know, in the audition process. If you can do one tiny thing that sets you apart from anybody else, that's another chance that they're going to look at you, because you'll apply to 100 jobs. You might get auditions for 10, and you might book one of those. So it's very much accuracy by volume. So telling people you're a Marine is somewhat helpful, but then that's as far as it will take you. After that, it's up to you to show that you're professional and prepared. You know, they only care so much that will give you like a second sideways glance, and then it's up to you to try to prove that you belong there. So like, I did a lot of I did tons of classes. I did 2 years with a coach. While I was in grad school, I took classes on actor resume writing. I took tons of audition classes on how to act.
Were you paying out of pocket, or was the GI Bill covering this?
Oh yeah, all out of pocket for that. I've probably dropped. I look at it as an investment, because if you get a principal role, which is a speaking role, one day is $1,000 before taxes.
Okay.
When I was on Ray Donovan, I got paid for a 2-week rate, and that's a couple $1,000. That's per week. It's like $3,000 or something, like, or $3,500. So, you know, per fortnight, that's $7,000. So it's a very, very good money. That's why people do this. Other than, you know,
but it comes in bursts though.
It comes in huge bursts with huge gaps in between. So like, I look at it as an investment. It's like, hey, if I spend this much money and I book one job, it will have been worth it. You know, I'll spend $200 on new headshots, or $200 on this class to meet this casting director, and you know, it's very pay to play, where there are these organizations where you can have coaching sessions alone with producers and casting directors and agents and stuff like that. And that's how I got my agent, is going to those, and you'll end up paying a lot to meet a lot of different people, but eventually you'll make an impression on one, and that's the next step to get you into the room with so and so. And like, I got a really good relationship with this one casting director, because I did a very good job, I think, in one class. So she gave me that kind of second look. Then I mentioned I was a Marine. She gave me another look, and then I sent a handwritten thank you note after the fact, after meeting her, which I think left an impression. You know? And so being professional and being on time, the military side of that really, really helps in this, because a lot of people, the reason people don't last in the acting business is, one, they can't afford to, because that pay comes in so sporadically. Mm-hmm. 2, they act like getting cast in the show is the end of the work. You know, once you show up on set, you still have to prove that you belong there. Otherwise, you're not going to get cast again, and people don't want to work with you. Your reputation is very quickly spread around, because, I mean, who sees something more than what you're making on TV? Yeah. You know? And if you're difficult to work with, or you act like a Neanderthal, or a prima donna on set, then no one's going to ever want to hire you back. And
especially if you've never done anything and you're walking in like, excuse me, I'm here to act.
Yes. So if you show up, you have to remember that on set, when you're on a big TV set or or a movie set or something like that. Like I was on Blue Bloods last week, and Donnie Wahlberg was in all the scenes I was in, and that guy is a true professional. He knows everybody's name on set. He shows up early. He leaves when he's done, but he makes everybody else's job easy. You got to remember that, like, you as the actor are the end of a very long chain to get that thing on camera.
Yeah.
Crew has to show up so early to rent the trucks, fill those trucks with all the gear, take it to the location, unload it, set it all up. Sound has to go. They have to get the lighting right. They have to set the cameras in certain angles, set up the video village so that the producer and director can sit there and see what it looks like. And then there's all the post stuff, and you're just the guy who walks in and says some words. And if you fuck up your lines, you will literally hear the entire crew on the set just go, ugh, because now you got to do it again.
Yeah,
and that you're slowing things down. So I flubbed one line in front of Donnie Wahlberg, and I was mortified because we had to do another take. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Especially at my level, I'm very, very low level here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing a couple lines here, a couple lines there on TV. And, I've gotten a couple parts where I have a full name as a character, but like half the time I'm like detective number one, but like that's how you start, and
you're paying your dues.
You pay your dues, but if you show up and you're like, I'm a principal actor, and you act like an asshole, like, just don't be a fucking dick. Like, understand that you are the bare bottom of the totem pole in terms of all the actors on that set. You are owed nothing, and you owe it to everyone on that set who wants to go home on time to do your fucking job. Just like anything else.
How important do you think representation is within the industry?
For me, it was crucial because New York has a lot less work than LA. It's getting more and more here because there are like 55 or 60 episodic TV shows filming at any given time. You got to think about all the Netflix and all those things that are happening, as well as network TV shows. And if you don't have an agent here, there's probably more than, there's 10 million people in this city. I'd say at least 200,000 of them are actors.
Yeah.
Between Broadway and TV and movies and stuff like that. There's way more than that in LA. But if you think about how many people are going to apply for a role, if they do an open casting call for something, they're going to get 200,000 submissions. Or let's say 100,000 submissions if it's just a male role.
Yeah.
Then out of that, it needs to be a certain age range. Well, that's going to eliminate a couple scores of thousands of people. And then it's like, oh, he needs to be this race or ethnicity. That's a couple more thousand people out the door. But even after all that elimination, you might be competing for a part with 10,000 people. And so if you even get into the room with an audition, that's a huge feat.
Okay.
And then if you get the part, that's even more. But to even get to that, you have to have an agent because the casting directors will not put out an open call unless it's something extremely like, hey, we need a one-legged Farsi speaker for Homeland, to play some wounded Afghan on the side of the road.
Yeah, there's a very specific thing they're looking for.
Otherwise, they have a pool. There are 1,000. Like, I am a 6'2", fairly in shape white guy named Chris. There are a million dudes that look and sound like me.
Yeah.
So for me to get through the gate, I have to have an agent because those casting directors are only going to release what's called the breakdowns, the request for somebody to come in and read for that part, to the agents. And that's how they whittle it down. And then the agents have their own pools of who fits that bill. And then I was like, okay, I have 2 white guys named Chris that I will send. And then this agent has 2 white guys named Chris that he will send, and that guy has 2. And then so you walk in this room. So I went in for an audition for some CW show, and you know how the CW is. It's like all ridiculously attractive people. Yeah. I walked in, and I don't think I'm like a slouch, but I was easily the ugliest dude in this room.
Yeah.
It looked like a fucking Abercrombie convention in there. It was just like these striking looking men who are all just like chiseled, and like I was. Like, I don't have a six-pack, and probably every one of these dudes had a six-pack. And they were just,
what do you wear to an audition?
It depends on what you're auditioning for. Like, if you're going for, like, a cop, you show up something that has, like, cop colors, like a dark blue button-down shirt, just something that, like, they can get the imagination around it. You show up for a military role. I've auditioned to be a Marine before and been told I didn't look like a Marine.
you don't fit the bill.
Yeah, and I showed up in my
not feeling it.
I brought my cami blouse and I put it on to be on camera wearing my cami blouse. I was
They're like, look, the Copenhagen really kind of turned us off.
You don't want to show up wearing a costume because that's distracting. But if it's something that's applicable, so when I got on Ray Donovan, I was supposed to be a thug from South Boston, so I wore a leather jacket and I brought a pack of cigarettes into the audition, and I just took out a cigarette and started lighting it while I was talking in the audition. And
have you played any military roles?
So I was on The Code, which was that terrible Marine lawyer show. So when
is it like a bad JAG?
It's a really bad JAG. Yeah, it got canceled after half a season. So they brought me on to do stunts in the first the pilot. So they shot the pilot, and then they were like, "Okay, well, we like this show, but we don't like the guy you have in the main character cast because he was too old." It was supposed to be a captain.
Yeah,
and they brought in this guy who was 45 years old. It was so they went and they recast this guy Luke Mitchell, who's this Australian dude. He's probably 28, but he looks like he's about 22.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had us. They brought us in. They're like, "Okay, you're going to run the obstacle course," and I was like, "What?" I was like, they didn't tell us any of that. And so I showed up first of all, they're like, "Wear your real uniform." I was like, "Okay." So I show up in my camis, and they're like, "Oh my God, your uniform's all fucked up." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're wearing a black belt." And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Marines wear tan belts." I was like, "No, tan belts wear tan belts." I was like, "I'm a black belt, so I have a black belt." And they're like, "Well, you need to change it, and your boots are wrong." I was like, "What brand are those?" I was like, "Belleville." And they're like, "Marines only wear Bates." And I was like, "That's not true at all." Okay, and then they're sitting there putting all these sets of alphas together, and they've got Navy medals mixed in with Marine medals, and they've got privates walking around with oak leaves on their cover, and I'm just like, oh my God. And so I walked over to the costume guy, and I was trying to explain to him how to fix it, and he just waves the Marine Corps order around in my face. He goes, "I have the manual right here. Go away."
Do they not have military advisors that come in for that specific
fat
thing?
Master sergeants from PACOM. And I was and he was standing there in that typical master sergeant way of, he just had a big coffee cup, and they were both sitting there just chain smoking, lighting one with the next. And I was like, "Hey man, what unit were you with?" He's like, "PACOM." I was like, "That's not a unit. That's a whole command." I was like, "What unit were you with?" He was like, "PACOM G1." I was like, "Oh, you're an admin, bitch." I was like, "That makes fucking sense." I was like, "You're obviously not a very good one because you can't even get the uniforms right." I was like, but it was terrible. And then they made us run the O course 12 times in a row without stopping. They built the entire O course. And so we were just doing it over and over and over again. And all these guys are real veterans, but most of them have been out for a few years, so they're not in O course shape. And so we're
just
doing
dying out there.
But we're just just totally.
It's
gassed.
hard on the body too. You get some bruises and shit from.
Well, and so it was 28 degrees, and they had us in just boots and utes. They wouldn't let us wear the sweatshirts.
Was this in New York?
Yeah, it was in New York. They rented this plant that had been a Pfizer plant that had gone under, and so it looked very like military, brick buildings. It was supposed to be in Quantico.
Okay.
And so they put Eagle Globe and anchors everywhere, and they had just Humvees driving around that they had rented, and they built this whole obstacle course in this backyard. And to be perfectly honest, it looked just like Quantico. I was like, holy crap. And but then they're shooting this, and it's 28 degrees outside, and they're spraying us with a hose because they wanted us to look like we were sweating, because we weren't sweating because it was so cold. And so now they actually added an extra obstacle. They put barbed wire. They wanted us crawling under barbed wire, and the ground was frozen. So our forearms are just bleeding because the ground was all mulched up and jagged from ice. So we're just pouring blood down our forearms, and we're getting sprayed with a hose, and so we're all about to hype out. And then there was just go again. And it's I went over to the stunt coordinator. I was like, this is not okay. You understand, we should get a pay raise for this, because what we were doing, we were getting what's called special
that shit's
ability.
Not easy.
No, we were doing what's called special ability, and the actual stunt guys came out and did it 3 times. They got it on film just to say that they did, and then they left, went back to the trailer to smoke weed or do whatever. And they're like, "Oh yeah, Cody, so you Marines just keep going." And I was like, so we're doing something that doesn't have a safety net, climbing this 50-foot rope, and if those stunt guys had done it, they would have gotten a $500 raise for doing it without support. I was like, hey, look, I'm a Marine. I've done this like 1,000 times, so like it doesn't bother me. But I know that the union rules state that if I do this, I deserve a $1,000 raise to go from special ability to stun, and they denied it. I was like, you motherfuckers. And I was like, I hope your show tanks, and it did. So fuck them.
Fuck them. What's been your most interesting like role you've had so far that you're like, you know what, I really felt like that. Like I played that role really well. I kind of melded with the character.
Well, most of them didn't really have a character. I mean, so far, so far, I have been Brett the Tree Guy on a Netflix holiday Christmas movie.
Shut the fuck up.
Well, I got that part because like I went for an audition for another guy in the movie that was like a much bigger part, and I didn't get it because they went with a guy who was like 55 years old.
Look, man, you're just not really putting off the tree vibe. So
well, no, it was for like an actual like character who was like part of the radio station or something.
Yeah.
And they went with a much older guy later on in the movie, and but the writer had been a Marine, and he wrote this. He's a gay man who joined the Marine Corps in 1979 and had to hide the fact that he was gay, and he wrote this book called The Pink Marine about being a gay Marine in the closet during boot camp. It's actually a really interesting book, and he ended up serving like 9 years. Like he became a MECEP and became a lieutenant and stayed in. And so he's like, look, you're too young for this part. He's like, you know, you're what, 34. He's like, they went with the 55-year-old guy, and he was like, okay, but he's like, but we just like you. So he just wrote this like 2-line part, and I got in cool. that movie, yeah. And then like the Blacklist and Godfather of Harlem were just like, you know, random cop roles where you just walk by and say a line. That was what the Blacklist was. The first real character role that I've gotten to do was this bad guy on Ray Donovan, and that was back in, I shot it in November. It came out in December, and I played a guy named Bernie Halsey, and I played a South Boston thug in 1977, and so I hijack an armored car, and I got to sit in this bar and plot a heist, and I just sort of channeled all like the, you know, staff meetings of us just trying to come up with some raid kind of thing, you know. And I just sat there drinking beer and pretend smoking cigarettes, and then we do the raid, and I had this like sawed-off shotgun, and I was shooting blanks, and then this like stuntman's walking right next to me shooting zinc out of a paintball gun, so it splats on the side of the truck, and it looks like impacts.
Yeah.
You know, sparks. It's really cool. That's not a visual effect. That's a little paint round that they're shooting out of a Tippmann 98 paintball gun.
Nice.
So we blocked it out. So it was like, on this foot I'm going to pull the trigger. On this foot I'm going to charge the pump on the shotgun, and on this foot I'm going to pull it again. So he could time out his shots with my shots. But in terms of like the acting, I actually got to like improv like a whole scene where we're planning the heist, and I did it in this ridiculous Boston accent that like I just thought it was funny, and then they let me do it, and I was like, okay, it's making it in the show, I guess.
Fuck it, here we go.
So yeah, that was probably the most fun I've had so far.
So what's in the future, man? What's the next step for you?
The next step, so far everything I've been doing is what's called co-star roles, and those are, you know, you show up and you say a few lines, and then, you know, your sort of arc as a character or whatever is done. You know, you might be the waiter that says, "Here's your drink, sir," or you might be the Bernie Halsey who's in one episode as the bad guy.
Yeah.
A guest star is like a guy who's somewhat well known or is like crucial to the plot, and that's one episode, or it might be a couple episodes. And then there's recurring, which is over many episodes of a season, and then there's like series regular, and that's like, you know, the normal big names that are.
That's where you want to be.
Yeah, so like the next step for me is to get the guest star, and I've done 3 or 4 big guest star auditions for like Law and Order and Blue Bloods and a few of those ones to be like an actual character with, you know, a few episodes under. I auditioned for a show on HBO in December that was going to be like 3 episodes as a guest star, and I auditioned for Law and Order to be like the husband of the woman that gets raped on SVU.
Oh man.
Yeah, so like some bigger parts. I just got to get over that next hurdle. In the meantime, I'm still JTACing it up at 225 and running boot sock with my buddy Paul.
Yeah, that's sick, dude. So I got a couple questions, and then and then we'll wrap up. So someone asked, why? I mean, I don't really understand this question. Maybe you will. Why is the fire support community not weighted as the battery career fire support officers? That's what it said.
Oh, okay. So what he's talking about is if you're an officer, to continue getting promoted, you have to do command time. Mm-hmm. And technically, when you're in the fire support community, it does not count towards time in your MOS. So you have to be in a battery shooting howitzers to consider it artillery time, which is weighted towards your promotability as like a commander. So like I will never be a battalion commander of an artillery battalion, not that I ever want to be, but because I've never commanded a battery.
Gotcha.
So once I got to ANGLICO, I just stayed in the fire support community, and they don't consider that part of the artillery community.
Yeah, we're the bastard children.
It really is, and they've been talking about forever making fire support its own MOS, but they haven't done it. So you have to like go do it and then go back to the artillery to get promoted. That's what he's asking. The answer to that is I don't know. They've been talking about changing it at very high levels above my pay grade for a long time, but it sucks. You either it's that kind of that Batman line. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly right. Another question said, "What's your favorite thing you've done in your career as a JTAC, or in your JTAC career?"
Definitely my time at Recon, because we just had so much free reign. Probably my time in Africa with them, because we had so much leeway, being able to come up with any kind of operation that you wanted within reason.
Yeah,
and not having to do 1,000 PowerPoints and ORMs for it. Just actually having some big boy roles. Very close second to that is Afghanistan with my guys. I wouldn't say that's my favorite. It's the most meaningful thing that's ever happened in my life. But my favorite, best memories are at First ANGLICO.
That's awesome, man. And then just my own toss out question: what 3 things would you tell somebody that has zero acting, like they want to get into acting, they don't know how to get into it? What are the first 3 things that you think they should do?
Okay. I've actually had a few people ask me this, and I've given them this whole paragraph thing. I'll see if I can boil it down to 3 things. The first thing is start taking classes. If you haven't, figure out if you can act. That's a big thing. Not everybody can. Sometimes I can't. It's a perishable skill, just like anything else, and you got to practice it. Some people have a natural ability. Other people can develop the ability. I think I fall somewhere in between. I have a big personality, but I needed to hone the skill, because there is a lot of skill, and especially technical skill on camera, which is very different from acting on stage. You have to know where the camera angle is and position. You have to know how to position your body so the camera can best see you. It's very technical, and it's I'm not great at that yet. That's 1. 2 is start meeting people early and often.
Networking is everything. Every industry.
Network. So I go to this thing called One-on-One New York, which is, I mentioned it before, you have to audition to get into the program, and then you pay certain amounts to be in classes with pretty big names in the industry, and you get to sit one-on-one in the room with them and have some time and ask questions and showcase your ability. And it's meant as a class. They're not technically supposed to hire you from that, because otherwise that would be very pay to play, which is against industry rules. But that's how they're going to get to know you.
Yeah.
That's how they'll remember you. And remember that unless you are truly, truly, truly unique, there are a million people out there who want to do this as well. And this is one of the hardest jobs. I fully understand that there is a 90% certainty that I will not become the next huge person doing this. But after all the things I've done in my life that have ended in near death or misery, I've decided that I'd rather be poor and give this a go than have the certainty of a job. And you tell Marines that I'm an actor, and okay, whatever, jerk off. There are a million people who are going to be haters as well, and
there's always haters.
brush that off and just be like, look, am I happy doing this? Yep. Okay. I'm not trying to tell people that I'm something more than I'm not. I've done very small little things, but I'm happy doing it. Hopefully it goes better, and it'd be fun to be somebody that, is on little kids' lunch boxes that they look up to you. That'd be super cool.
That would be cool.
But that's 2, meeting people and figuring out whether you really want to do this. And then 3, if you live in a place where either somewhere outside of like LA, Vancouver, Atlanta, or New York, which are like the big filming hubs, if you live somewhere other than that, make your own content. Because you're going to have a lot of trouble getting cast in anything that shoots in all those big places.
Mm-hmm.
So you either need to be in those big places so that you're available and just raising your hand for everything, or start writing. Start writing until you think that it's something worth shooting. Do a crowdfunding thing or scrapes together some money and make your own projects. Like, there are a ridiculous number of people who've gotten famous off just YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the advice I'd give for somebody starting out. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can link my page to this, but I'll ask more direct questions. But I don't want to. We're already at 2.5 hours. I don't want to.
Oh, that's cool. I've gone up to I think over 4 before. I cut that one into 2 episodes though. I do. So what? Since we're kind of wrapping up, go ahead and you got any? I know you started Boot Sock, which was hilarious when I saw the name. I was like, yes, that's so funny.
That's me and my best friend from my battalion who lives right across the street from me here in New York, and a buddy of mine from Anglico, Major Palumbo, who was on the Mew with us.
Yeah.
So we came up with the idea of, there's so many veteran T-shirt companies, but we just wanted to do something a little more irreverent, just kind of making fun of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are very uber motivated. And so we've got some pretty jokey shirts, lots of puns, and then there's some JTAC type stuff in there. We try to leave the unit stuff to you because we love J. Kramer Media, and we don't want to step on your lawn, but we decided to make really funny, stupid shit, a lot of inside jokes to various units. So it's boot special operations capable. Because we call our new guys boots. So we just like the dichotomy of the idea of a super motivated boot who wants to do special operations. And it also, it's a pun. Boot Sock. It's funny.
I think it's great, man. I support anybody that gets out and, they want to do something like that. Again, like you said, fuck the haters. It sucks at first. You're not really making any money. Nobody's following your Instagram page. Yeah. And then you put time and effort into it. And
I'm not
eventually
a
you
meme
get a
lord
following.
like you, man. You've got the meming down. I'm just pulling photos of me and Paul and Bo's time out there, and so we're making some regular posts out there, but we just wanted to make some silly shit that made us giggle. We just sit over beers and make some inside joke into a T-shirt every now and then. So.
That's good stuff. Any other organizations or anybody else or anything you want to shout out?
I will plug one thing. It's not mine to plug at all, but I do think it's a very good resource because of your audience. A lot of us, when we were talking about earlier about guys who claim to be supporting the veterans community. The best one that I've found so far is Headstrong, and if you guys out there haven't heard of it, Headstrong.org or the HeadstrongProject.org they started I think here in New York, but they're in San Diego and Denver and New York and a lot of places. A lot of guys don't go seek help because if you're still with the teams, you might lose your security clearance and then you lose your support, your emotional support network.
Yeah.
So they'll go do 8 deployments and they're not right in the head and they still won't seek help. Headstrong is totally free and it's always completely off the books. There is no record that you ever saw anybody, and they will see you as long as you want to see them. And all you got to do is send them an email and you can get help. I saw them for a little while after my divorce, and I stopped having nightmares after talking to them for a while. So they really, really helped me. So
that's awesome, man.
If you guys know somebody that needs some help and wants to do it very discreetly, or you want some help yourself, look up Headstrong, and they are awesome. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm all about like tell guys like so on the last podcast Fosberg was talking about how he's become like really religious over the last couple years. And he's like, you might have noticed on my Facebook. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed, but you know what, man? Like if it brings positivity to your life, like good on you. And I'm not like some anti-religion person or anything. I went to church a lot. I'm Southern Baptist, if I'm going to claim something. But
I went to Catholic school, so they beat it right out of me, I did 10 years in the clink.
Yeah, it's funny. You hear people that went to Catholic school talk about how you're just beat by fucking nuns and shit. You're like, what? I thought they were supposed to be like really nice people.
No.
Oh man, that's funny. But well, hey man, I appreciate you coming on the show, taking the time
thanks for having me,
coming on. Good luck in your future acting and stuff like that. I know you're gonna make it big, or at least I hope you make enough residuals where you don't have to worry about.
I hope I make enough to pay my health insurance this year. Let's put it that way.
Fuck it, man. There you go.
All right, thanks, brother.
Hey, you too.
All right, take care.
Bye. Hey, thanks again to Chris Walker for coming on the show. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the show so that you're getting notifications every time I release them. I'm going to start trying to release 2 a week now, so we'll see how that goes. But subscribe so you'll get those notifications, and make sure you check out my website. That's jkramergraphics.com, and check out my Instagram at jkramergraphics. Have a good one.